Somebody's missing. Four missing.
Yeah, I think I saw
Based on the temperature. You guys are going to I'll pull them up.
Oh, it was in that one document. One document.
I have 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Shelby County Board meeting to order. This is the March 9th, 2023 board meeting. We will start out with the prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's prayer is by Carol Cole. You all rise and remove your hats.
Father, as we gather together, we praise you for this day. Reset our agendas as we sit in your presence. May we be of one spirit and have a common purpose to be attentive and patient. We ask for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to find long-lasting solutions and meaningful decisions that will help us to build each other up and glorify your name. And Father, we ask that you help us to be quick to listen and slow to anger when others share their ideas. Cover us with your love and help us to leave this place with a joyful heart. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can have a roll call, please.
Mark Bennett. Here. Teresa Bang. Cody Brand. Here. Tim Brown.
Here.
Carol Cole.
Here.
Charles Davis.
Here.
Julie Edwards. Here. Martha Fernhaber. Here. Clay Hardy. Here. Matt Kessler. Annette Martin. Here. Tad Mayhall. Here. Keith McCormick.
Here.
Tim Morse.
Here.
Lori Nelson. Here. David Ogden.
Here.
Bobby Orman.
Here.
Sonny Ross.
Here.
Mitchell Sheff.
Here.
Don Tate. Brent Wallace. Jeremy Williams.
Present.
We have a quorum. Looking for approval of the minutes from the February 9th, 2023 meeting. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Got a motion by Charlie, seconded by Heath. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up to public body comment. Is there any public body comment? We do have some, I would like to just update. In the last meeting, we approved of changing our public body comment policy. There is, it's 5 minutes, and you can yield your remaining time to a neighbor. Your neighbor can only accumulate a maximum of 10 minutes. So, if that is as clear as mud, we'll continue on with public body comment. Cody.
Yeah, I had a text this afternoon from the MABUS president, which is in charge of certain departments around here as a collective. March 28th at 7. Yeah, March 28th at 7 at Shelby Fire. They want to talk about going digital for all EMS, fire, and the county. So they'd like some board presence there.
March 28th, what time?
7.
7
Shelby Fire.
At Shelby Fire.
Yeah.
Public body comment. Sir, would you please take a name, too?
My name is John Herron. I live in Coles County, and I have a piece of property in Shelby County. And I've come over to Shelby quite often, and I've always wondered what time it was. As I come up the hill, the time never changes. I was wondering what was wrong with the tower clock and what could be done to improve it. And the reason I bring this up, a few years ago, I came over and I was informed that I had to go to the sheriff's office. So I went to the sheriff's office, talked to him, and he said, and I asked him, well, where's the dial and all the peripherals? And he says, well, we put them on a pile and burn them. And I thought, well, that's pretty stout. I asked if I could go up and take a look at your clock tower. And he said no. I have a partner in crime I've known for about 18 years. He's a retired physician. How he and I became friends through horology. And I talked to him before coming over here, and he said he would be willing to help me with this. So how can I get upstairs and look at your clock tower? What are you going to do with it? If you're not, I've seen it. I have ideas.
Sure. So I've been on the board for 3 years, and 3 years ago, I can remember this being quite a stellar topic. At that point in time, it would have been public buildings or something like that. What committee was that?
Public buildings.
Yeah, public buildings committee. They had been working on it. I guess there's parts and pieces that were either hard to build or attain, and but several years ago, they had been trying to remedy the problem and get the clock working again. So at that point in time, that's about all I know, is there was things going on, but being that the parts were either hard to or impossible to attain or build, it kind of just
They're just not that hard to do. I've been in clock towers in Lincoln, Savannah, over at Terre Haute, various places, where John Billings or whatever town now, I forget where it was, wherever he held the bank up. I've been up in that clock tower. I've been down in southern Indiana, the clock towers. These parts are not that difficult to acquire.
So if you're, I mean, from what I'm hearing, you're offering to help. There is a committee, the Public Safety Committee, that works with the sheriff on different things, specifically to the buildings. So those committees meet, or the Public Safety Committee meets at least once a month, usually, is it the third Thursday of the month?
The first Tuesday.
First Tuesday.
April 6th.
So April 6th would be the next public safety meeting.
Where's it located, huh?
It'll be at the sheriff's office,
Okay.
just across the way
Yeah,
back here.
I know where it is.
Yeah.
I know,
So-
well, if you know me, I know where it is. So,
So I would highly encourage you to attend that meeting and, even facilitate being a part of the meeting.
well, I don't want to sit here and spin my wheels, because I can do that any time of the day. I mean, that's all I was curious about.
Yeah.
If you don't want to fix it, would you be interested in parting with it? I couldn't afford the crane to bring it in and take it out, but I mean, we could take a donation because Urbana fixed their clock. And that guy is, he worked at the University of Illinois. He's a pretty nice fellow. His name's Bruce Hanna, and we're good friends. He could guide me a little bit, but I don't mean to take up all your evening on this clock thing, but it needs to either be fixed or disposed of.
Sure.
If you could throw it my way, I'd be mighty appreciated.
Okay. Well, like I said, April 6th would be the next meeting, so.
Thank you.
7 p.m., yes. 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Public body comment. Sir.
My name is Chris Bain, and I just wanted to ask a question. I'll be brief tonight. I want to ask a question about the agenda, and maybe you'll get to it and talk about it this evening already, and I'm asking a redundant question. But number 9B, I was curious about the $15,000 in ARPA funding for scanning documents for the state's attorney's office. And I just wanted to ask the question if this is a precursor or to accommodate remote work, because I understand that the state's attorney and the assistant state's attorney do not live close to Shelby County. And so I wanted to know if this is to accommodate remote work for them. And and that's, I guess, more a question for them, but also a question for you guys. As well as asking the question, if this is the case, was this something that you knew when you appointed the state's attorney, Mr. Hammond? That's it.
So the scanning project is more lined up with getting in compliance with Supreme Court rulings that would say there needs to be software and communications between all the offices, whether it's the public defender, the judge, the state's attorney, the circuit clerk. Putting all those on the same communication level is part of this project. The aspect of working from remote is not the case.
So the state's attorney is planning on being here on a consistent basis.
Yes, and actually, to my knowledge, you've been here for almost 2 weeks straight through the week, almost. So, beyond meetings and such. So. Any other public body comment?
Austin Pritchard. Item number 9 on there, the $30,000 or up to $30,000 to pay Moultrie County for services and using ARPA funds for that. State's Attorney's budget has a $15,000 line item that takes care of special prosecutors, or the budget I looked at anyway. Shouldn't that be coming out of the State's Attorney's budget or out of the general fund instead of ARPA funds?
So these would be above and beyond the budgetary confines, and being that it was the special prosecutors were appointed by the court, it was more or less out of my decision or the state's attorney's decision to appoint these people. It was done in necessity to keep the courts operating. So therefore, why should it come out of his budget? If we have budgeted funds specifically for administrative fees, we can justify this expense to the board, and we maintain his budget as it stands. So that's why both of them are set up the way they are, is to maintain his budget as the way they stand.
Well, there's some of that state's attorney's budget that's not being used because we had 2 months that we didn't pay for a state's attorney. from the time Nicole left to the time Mr. Hanlon was sworn in. So there was state's attorney salary and assistants or staff in that office that is not being budgeted. I don't see why all that 30,000 should come out of ARPA funds. I think it should come from somewhere else.
Okay. We'll get into this in the discussion. Any other public body comment? Public body comment, there in the back. Tricia.
Yes, I was paying attention to what occurred at the last board meeting on comments, and I believe somebody stated, I'm not for sure who, that if we have the gumption to come and comment, that almost sounds like you don't think we have the right to comment. It was kind of an arrogant comment, and you know, you guys have to sit here. We're able to either watch it at home, get the minutes. What we say has no impact really on what you're going to do. You have it already made up, pretty much made up your mind when you come here through your committee meetings and different things. But I think you're treating the public pretty poorly, and we're taxpayers. And I understand that you guys are getting criticized, just like when the previous board, you guys were doing heavy criticism of that board. It happens. I've been there. So I think it's hypocritical to go after the previous state's attorney and blame her for resigning, but yet some of you may have been in your own communities openly calling for resignations. That's hypocritical, and I think people need to really start caring about each other and humanity, because I think humanity has taken a beating, and I think we need to get that back.
Public body comment?
I had someone reach out to me this week about, they're a small business, local small business, kind of struggling post-pandemic, and I suggested that maybe they contact or apply for some ARPA funding. I mean, that's what I thought we received the money for. So when I tried to find out how a business applies for ARPA funding, relief, I was told that when we received the money, there was nothing put in the budget about community impact. So we got this money, the county got this money to help community members, local businesses, etc., affected by COVID, yet we didn't make a pathway for anyone to apply for that money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I feel like the budget committee now probably needs to work toward that, because that's sort of withholding funds meant for the public from the public.
So,
If they don't have access to it.
in a roundabout way, the original purpose of the funds were to mitigate, like you described. As time wore on, a year, 18 months, there was a transition to kind of an open qualifier. No, it was within 6 months of the administration, more or less is that any legal budgetary purpose that you would create or use funds for, the ARPA funds is used for. It can be used for. So with that said, anything that we would normally budget money for, we can use ARPA funds for. Now, flipping to the table a little bit, as I talk myself through that, if we never originally budgeted money for public relief, then would it be a proper use of the money to use it for public relief?
Well,
I'm not saying it's a bad
isn't it
idea,
in the
and that's what
title
it was
of
for.
the funding?
Exactly. This is really a bellwether question.
I believe Bellwether mentioned it to the board that we needed to put something in the budget for community impact. And he was, I won't say ignored, but it was never followed up.
Right. And that was established last summer.
Sure, so we know that's a problem now. So shouldn't we try to work toward getting some relief for small businesses in town struggling? Or in the county, sorry.
Right.
So we've identified a problem, let's work to fix the problem.
Eric, is there anything you can add to this conversation?
I was waiting on a response from Bellwether on that because I would think any funds that we don't use, even though we budgeted all the remaining ARPA funds, I can't imagine that we're going to use them, potentially budget into another line item next year or the entire fund. We could still, I think, do something out of that impacted community, but it would just be a process of the board, and then you'd have to open it up with some parameters of how any business in the county applies. I would think the 066 would function like any other budget.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna work on that?
So to the budget committee, the finance committee, any of the committees that would deal with address funds, put that in the brain bank so we can discuss that at a later time. Thank you. Any other public body comment? Public body comment? Public body comment? Thank you. We will continue on with the agenda as listed. Number 5 is Beth Beck Morris, the CEFS Transportation Director, discussion and vote to approve of a list of resolutions and ordinances.
Hello, everyone. It's grant season again, so I'm here to ask the board to approve the ordinance, which is to propose, it establishes Shelby County will provide public transportation, and that the board chair will execute and file those grant documents on behalf of the county board. I sent the ordinance in. Typically, the service area has been the county lines: Christian, Clay, Fayette, Montgomery, Moultrie, and Shelby County. We have a situation in Fayette County where there are some VA veterans that need to get to Effingham for treatment, and they used to get their volunteer rides through the VFW and the American Legion down there, and they've closed. So we proposed to IDOT that we do a dedicated route from Vandalia, go through Brownstown, St. Elmo, and pick up people maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and pick up in Altamont. Because Altamont was in Effingham County, we aren't allowed to do that without extending our service territory, and we are allowed to do that. So I'd like to ask that you approve an ordinance that we extend our service area 10 miles from the county border. And it's my understanding, and I clarified with IDOT yesterday, that Effingham County does not need to approve that, but I cannot pick up in Altamont unless we extend our service area.
Do I have a motion to...
Is that language in any of the documents that we've received so far?
No, but I have the updated one because I was just
Okay, I haven't
updated
read
today.
that. So
Yeah.
okay.
So in the form of a motion, what do we need to...
Well, you need to decide if you want to approve the original ordinance without extending the borders, or approve the ordinance with the extension of the borders.
Okay, so let's get a motion on the table so we know exactly what we're discussing.
I'll make the motion to accept the ordinance with the extension of the 10 miles from the border.
Okay, so we have a motion by Martha to accept the ordinance with a 10-mile extension, seconded by Julie, and then Tad, do you have questions?
Well, no, I just want to make sure, so we're talking about this section 5311, public transportation ordinance, correct?
It is, yeah, it's the transportation applicant ordinance. And the only language I added is in section 1, where it says Shelby County shall hereby provide public transportation within the county or county's limits and within a 10-mile radius of service county boundaries at a rate of $1 per mile outside of county limits.
dollar per mile. I would say that was another question. That was a question that was on my mind is there any extensive fee? And then what is the long-term ramifications? Is this, you know, a true benefit to be to the participants and the citizens without incurring, you know, going across jurisdiction lines if there's another, you know,
Right. I don't see much use of this beyond the Fayette Effingham border. I mean, we could come into a situation in the other counties, but there are so many people in Vandalia. Their DeVita just closed as well, so I'm working with DeVita to try to get patients into Effingham. They would be a part of this established route as well. But to just pick up in Vandalia alone and Brownstown and St. Elmo, you know, obviously we want to maximize the bus. If we're going through Altamont, I would like to make it a stop too.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions, Martha?
I just, a question on some of the language in this that didn't make sense to me, and I'm looking particularly at like item number 4, item number 5. It repeats Shelby County twice. It says the Shelby County Board Chair of the Shelby County.
Oh, I know.
Should that read Shelby County Board Chair of the Shelby County Board is hereby authorized to
Yeah,
execute?
it probably is just a typo in their template. I get the template and kind of change the dates
I didn't
and
know if
stuff.
that should be cleaned up just a little bit. I mean, it doesn't change the purpose of the document, but
Right.
it doesn't read real well.
Any other questions or comments? Jeremy?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. Is this going to cause any Shelby County taxpayer money to be used for purposes or people outside Shelby County?
Anybody picked up in Altamont it would be charged under the Shelby County grant and not the Effingham County grant. But yes, the 5311 and the downstate operating money are a part of Shelby County, but Shelby County does not directly put in any money into the transportation system. It's all 5311 and downstate operating funds.
It's a pass-through.
It's a pass-through.
Pass-through. Are there any jurisdictional or legal concerns about Shelby County operating outside Shelby County?
No. In fact, this was IDOT's idea because I brought to their attention the issue we were having with the Vandalia transportation. And they had also, they had spoken with some of the veterans that were having the problem, and they were the ones that said this would be a solution.
It was actually been escalated to the feds because I sat in on that meeting and there was
Yes, you
calls
did.
out of Congress to get it fixed because these are veterans.
There you have it. Comes from straight from DC. We need to get this fixed.
I mean, we don't have to pick up in Altamont. I could drive straight through it, but we have a lot of people in Altamont that need to come to Effingham too, and it just makes sense to me logistically. If I'm coming through there to pick them up when I'm coming through there, instead of sending a different bus out to get them. And the units will go to Shelby County, so it'll improve Shelby County units.
I guess just for point of clarification, you're already operating outside the county, right? You're passing through Altamont to get there.
We're not picking up people.
Right, what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's
still
actually picking them up is the problem. We can pass through, we take people to Champaign, Decatur, to medical appointments. But if we pass through a county that is not ours, we don't pick up.
Right, but you're still operating because you're passing through. We're just doing a courtesy stop.
Right. It's an incidental stop.
I appreciate that, thank you.
This is actually one of those times where government is actually increasing efficiency. Charlie?
Now, with this agreement, you will be picking up Shelby County veterans as well, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you say it passed through, I took it.
No, we'll just be driving through Altamont on that route, and this extending the service area allows us to pick up Altamont as well.
Any other questions, comments? We will take a roll call vote, I believe. Transportation one,
Mark Bennett,
Yes.
Cody Brands,
Yes.
Tim Brown,
Yes.
Carol Cole,
Yes.
Charlie Davis,
Yes.
Julie Edwards,
Yes.
Martha Fernhaber,
Yes.
Clay Hardy,
Yes.
Annette Martin,
Yes.
Tad Mayhall,
Yes.
Keith McCormick,
Yes.
Tim Morse,
Yes.
Lori Nelson, David Ogden,
Yes.
Bobby Warman,
yes.
Sonny Ross,
Yes.
Mitchell Sheff,
Yep.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Next is the resolution authorizing the board chair to apply for 5311 grant funds.
The resolution is just authorizing the application and the execution of the 5311 grant, which is the federal part of our funding. And I did just want to mention that after several years, we finally got an increase in funding. It was a 5% increase. We used to get $393,033. We got a 5% increase in the base, and then we got a one-time 15% increase. So that brings us to the amount of $453,953 for this year. Next year, they're just not guaranteeing that 15% increase, that there'll be the funding to sustain it, but we know we have it this year. The base we know we have. That's going to be our base probably for a long time now, but I was pretty pleased to get that. It was much needed and long overdue.
I entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the board chair to apply for the 5311 grant funds. I've got Cody on the motion, second by Tad. Discussions and questions of the board? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mark Bennett,
Yes.
Cody Brands,
Yes.
Tim Brown,
Yes.
Carol Cole,
Yes.
Charles Davis,
Yes.
Julie Edwards,
Yes.
Martha Fernhaber,
Yes.
Clay Hardy,
Yes.
Annette Martin,
Yes.
Tad Mayhall,
Yes.
Keith McCormick,
Yes.
Tim Morse,
Yes.
Lori Nelson, David Ogden,
Yes.
Bobby Warman,
Yes.
Sonny Ross,
Yes.
Mitchell Sheff,
Yes.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next is the acceptance of intergovernmental agreements with Moultrie Christian and Montgomery Clay and Fayette counties.
These are just the intergovernmental agreements that basically state that these counties are allowing you to administer the grant on their behalf in their counties. You're the grantee for all these counties.
Motion to approve. Keith, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Are we technically spending funds here? Or is this just the agreements? This is just an
No
agreement?
funds, yeah, it's just the agreement. It's all attached.
Any questions, discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item D is purchase of service agreement between CEFS Economic Opportunity Corporation and Shelby County.
This is just the agreement with CEFS to be the provider for your grantee counties as the pass-through operator.
Motion to approve the purchase of service agreement between CFS and Shelby County. Charlie makes a motion. I've got a second by Cody. Discussion? Lori?
What's the length of the term of the agreement?
1 year.
Yeah, is it pretty much all this stuff we do annually?
It's annually, yeah. It's the 5311 fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th.
Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mark Bennett,
Yes.
Cody Brands,
Yes.
Tim Brown,
Yes.
Carol Cole, Charles Davis,
Yes.
Julie Edwards,
Yes.
Martha Fernhaber,
Yes.
Clay Hardy, Annette Martin,
Yes.
Tad Mayhall,
Yes.
Keith McCormick,
Yes.
Tim Morse,
Yes.
Lori Nelson, David Ogden,
Yes.
Bobby Warman,
Yes.
Sonny Ross,
Yes.
Mitchell Sheff,
Yeah.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next is the vehicle lease agreement between CFS and Shelby County.
This agreement is just the vehicles that we write the consolidated vehicle procurement grant for are actually in Shelby County's name. You're just leasing them to us to use in the operation of your service. And one thing, there are 43 vehicles right now in the fleet. 14 of those are out of service. And I know there's a lot of them sitting out here in Shelbyville. We are working on getting some of those disposed or refurbished with some CARES money that's left over. We believe there's a couple that can be refurbished. We wrote the 2022 grant, CBP grant, last April, and that was the first grant we had to write for vehicles since 2018. They estimated we were going to get some new vehicles come this summer. They still don't have a contract with the manufacturer to build those. So we're looking at not getting any more vehicles until probably summer 24 to start, 24 and 25 before we get the last of them. But we are working on getting those ones that are no longer functional out. It just takes a long time, and I apologize for that. You know, things come up and they kind of takes the back burner because it's not a priority. And then once but the paperwork's half done. When I get the paperwork to IDOT, it could take a year or 2 years to get that lease, the lien taken off. So it is a work in progress, and we're trying to clean up that area.
We have a motion to approve the lease agreement between CFS and Shelby County. I've got a motion by Martha, seconded by Lori. Any discussions, questions on the board? Sonny?
So we own the vehicles, but the state of Illinois liens them?
They have a lien on them, yes. And once they release the lien, then we can sell them.
Why do they have a lien on them?
Because it's their money, I guess, that buys them. And the lien stays on them until we write for disposal that either they're non-operational, they're unsafe, or they've reached their useful life.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. We've got a very valuable resource that because this is in a very complicated situation. She does a very good job of it. Anyway, enough of my personal comment. Any more questions of the board? Hearing none. Actually, I think I had a question. Would there potentially be, or is there anything in the works that would need to come back to the board for disposal, or is that something you can do on your own?
That's something, yeah, we can do on our own. I don't think, I'm trying to remember, we did some disposals in Effingham a couple years ago. And I think once it's released, I just think I need the signatures and the titles from you. I think you sign the titles. And then you do a sealed bid. If we don't get anything, then we just scrap them for what we can get.
Any other questions, comments? Dave?
If there is a concern, you say it could be 1 to 2 years before some of the units are moved. And this would be something to go to the Highway Bridge Committee. If there's adequate space available out at the highway garage, could those units be put on that facility if people are having issues in town?
I haven't had too many complaints about it. I know there's just been some concern occasionally from some board members and just some general public asking about them, why there's so many sitting out there. That's why I just wanted to let you know what's going on. I haven't had any major complaints, but I mean, yeah, that's always something we can look at. Right now, that lot across where they're at, across from our maintenance facility, is leased from Shelby County Community Services. Yeah, we tried to buy it. We wanted to build just a bus barn there, but they weren't willing to sell.
All right, any more questions, comments? This is a lease, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Mark Bennett.
Yes.
Cody Brands.
Yes.
Tim Brown.
Yes.
Carol Cole. Charles Davis.
Yes.
Julie Edwards.
Yes.
Martha Fernhaber.
Yes.
Clay Hardy. Annette Martin.
Yes.
Tad Mayhall. Keith McCormick.
Yes.
Tim Morse.
Yes.
Lori Nelson. David Ogden.
Yes.
Bobby Orman.
Yes.
Sonny Ross.
Yes.
Mitchell Sheff.
Yeah.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next up is the memorandum of understanding for vehicle use between Shelby County and Effingham County.
Yeah, this just basically is an agreement that the Effingham County-owned buses and the Shelby County buses can be used, like when we have to take them out of service for state inspections or repairs or something. If we need to bring an Effingham bus up here to supplement, or we need to take a Shelby County bus down there to supplement, you guys agree to do that. The charges for that vehicle are based on the revenue service and the revenue miles of where they're used. So the expenses in operating them are kept separate. But any maintenance done at the Shelbyville facility, any miles put on the vehicles in service of Effingham County is all charged to that grant. But it just allows us some flexibility in making sure that our services can stay continuous.
Okay, entertain a motion for the MOU between Effingham County and Shelby County. Sid Morse makes the motion. I've got a second by Martha. I have a question. Has Effingham County already approved this by chance?
No, I go to their legislative meeting Thursday, and then their board meeting will be the following Monday, I think it's the 20th, and then they will approve it. They have it, and they've seen it. The Transportation Committee approved it for recommendation to the legislative board, but they're a much more complicated process. I got 3 meetings to go to there.
Very good. Senator.
Was that MOU in our board packet? So I wasn't able to see anything to say anything about that. Didn't know if I was overlooking it.
Well, I thought I'd sent it, but maybe I hadn't.
Vehicle agreement between Shelby County and CFS. I'm not sure if I'm
I
seeing
don't know.
it. Anybody else seen it?
I don't think we got that.
I did bring some extra copies with me.
Is that something that could wait until after Effingham approves it and we've had time to review it to approve it, or does that need done tonight?
Well, the grant is due April 3rd, and
Our
they
next
won't
board
meet
meeting.
again.
Will be April 9th.
Yeah.
We can't write the grant without passing this MOU?
It's always been a part of the grant. I would have to talk to IDOT.
So this is
It's time.
just a reading. I mean, we've done this for
For
years and
years.
years and years in the past. This isn't
Yeah.
anything that's new.
That
And
doesn't
nothing's
always
been
make it
changed.
right.
No, I'm not saying it does. I was just asking the question.
When we have a copy, in the interest of time, we can pass it around, make everybody happy so we can
I
let
have,
you get
yeah,
your
I have it
grant.
right here. Hey, Beth, would you mind just think of emailing me that? Thank you.
If you could just give us a couple of highlights, just so that we kind of have a basic understanding of it.
So,
Turn the microphone.
thank you. There is some references to ILCS 3740-2-1, which is the reference to the Section 5310 Transportation Assistance Grant Program. Shelby County, Effingham County shall be designated as primary participant pursuant to Section 601-105B of the Illinois DOT regulations. It shall be responsibility of the primary participants to receive all Section 5311 and 5310 funds from IDOT pursuant to said department agreements with primary participants. Primary participants shall disperse said funds to the designated transit administration or service provider pursuant to the terms and conditions of said purchase of service agreement, which we just approved the purchase of service agreements. It seems pretty binding. That's my 10,000-foot view.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, none of this money is ever spent out of county funds, right? We are just an entity that's a pass-through. So this really affects the county really on no other level, except we're helping
No
to
direct
facilitate,
level.
a service.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's all grant funds that we receive and pass right through to them so they can operate and provide the services that they're obligated to provide. And,
Yeah, CDFS actually fronts the money to pay for everything, and then when we submit for reimbursement, it comes to you, you write the check, and it comes to us.
Thank you.
right now, we've got a motion and a second on the MOU for vehicle use between Shelby and Effingham County. This is, I don't feel the need to be a roll call vote unless somebody says differently. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Erica.
Bobby, I would just like to publicly state as the PCOM coordinator for Shelby County, Beth and the staff at CEFS, John and Tina, are fabulous to work with. They make my life easy because I don't know a lot about rural transportation, but I would just like to publicly state what a professional job they do and the pleasure they are to work with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Beth. Okay, up next is the item 6, which is the presentation of information on the Prairie Power Inc. project. We do have some representatives from, if you just identify yourself and you guys have the floor. Just an overview, we've been approached on power line projects that would potentially go through county property, and they're here to just explain the who, what, how, and why. So I'll let you guys have the floor and we'll go from there.
I'm Ryan Campbell from Contract Land Staff. We are contracted through Prairie Power. I'm Zach Conworth through Contract Land Staff, same as him.
I'm Jim Matlock. I work out at Shelby Electric on Seal and the VP of Engineering out there.
Very good.
I guess to start, I have some maps. I think I have enough copies for all the members that I'd like to hand out. That's fine. So, I guess while they're handing those out, so the first map on there is, excuse me, really just the overview map of the entire project that affects the whole county. I don't know if we really need to discuss it much tonight. I figured I'd provide it because all the impacted landowners along the route were sent that map. I believe really the only thing we really need to discuss is where it impacts the county property, but I wanted to provide that. The two printouts, the second and third pages, are primary and alternate route going through the county farm property. Alternate, I'd like to see if we might be able to choose a route tonight, if possible. The primary route was what we initially presented, and I believe from what I've heard, there was a little bit of concern with that route, and a second route was presented. So I had some points on why the primary route was chosen and why we might want to choose that one opposed to the alternate. Let's see if we could go through that.
Okay, so from the February 28th budget meeting that we addressed the zoning issues, which I kind of thought was find us to fall into the zoning. There was questions asked about right-of-way. And this one map does indicate that the poles would be off-center of the right-of-way. The blown up view, so the one that goes right through the middle of the property.
Okay.
So according to the pink line and the dots, they would be offset of center and right of way.
So the idea, it would be pretty close to center. The idea is that they have roughly 50 feet on each side of the line. This drawing is supposed to be very preliminary. In the end, they would have the full survey plat that would show it in more detail. This is just to show you the border we would need, which would be 100 feet through there.
Survey would have to be done for sure for the map so that everybody's aware specifically of the center line is. This is not something that would be found with the paperwork before the house wants to deal with that and all that.
alternative map, is there any possibility of going up the west side of the county farm?
Like the far west side on the bigger parcel?
Yes.
That wasn't discussed. I think the idea is, I think there's existing distribution, correct me if I'm wrong, that follows all the way to that corner, and then it continues south, and that's what we cornered off of. I think the idea would just to follow that all the way to the corner and then go north. It hasn't been discussed internally if we could go up the west side. Honestly, I don't think that would be a great idea, because if you see where we continue north past the county farm, it continues north of the roadway. We've already discussed with those landowners, and as you see, we're going on the east side of their parcel, and they've already tentatively been agreeing to go up along their east side. So going west, we'd have to get all the way across the top then. So then you have the line going along the whole west side and the whole north side. That seems like a lot more of an impact, I would think, rather than.
I know everybody doesn't have the map that I do, that the engineer's saying.
Right.
Which, as you stated, they're going to the east of the property that's north of the county farm.
Yes, correct.
Which you're going to have an offset there at the corner of the county farm. So if you did go on the west side,
right,
come across the north, you would be right in line with where you're planning on
right
your jog anyway.
Yeah, the point I'm getting at is they would have a further impact on the farm, because you go along the whole west side and the whole north. So I think that would add a lot more line on the property and a lot more easement area.
So what he's saying is, if they follow the existing transmission line on the south side of the road, all the way to the curb, and then cut straight north, it's a half-mile run. If we go to the west side, it's a half-mile north and a half-mile east. So we would be doing a full mile easement versus a half-mile easement is what they're looking at proposed. So that's why they proposed it the way they did.
Correct. And I know we had talked at it during our farm committee, or budget committee meeting, was the proposed line goes straight basically through the farm, where whoever is doing the field work has to work around those poles. I agree, it's less intrusive on the farm overall, but it does allow us to.
And then the map that was provided, there is a small jog at it follows, it comes up to the kind of the north edge, it goes east and then back north along the east side there, so it doesn't go all the way straight through now. Because it's going to follow the fence road, basically. They're going to have to remove some trees along that fence road. And if anybody wants me to come around and show you what I'm talking about, that doesn't make sense, I'd be more than happy to do that.
You're referring to this map where?
Yeah, which one
No.
of these is the new one?
No.
It says primary and alternate on the top of it.
Top left corner, primary is what we would like. This is going to make this jog here.
Yeah,
This shows it going straight through. This jog here. That's just, it's a little confusing. Yes.
This is the section.
We got a whole lot of mumbling and rumbling. Please, let's keep this open. Keep the communications open and loud enough for the public to hear. So we'll get an update on what's going on over here just in a minute. But I would like to make a point that this is a project that benefits a multitude of people in many townships and possibly, well, down the road, the whole county and possibly even outside the county. So whatever we decide, we need to route poles through somewhere to get this loop made as a service to the public, as a general whole. So any other questions, comments?
Sure. And I guess to that point, if you guys could explain how this benefits the community as a whole.
Okay, yeah. So as you can see on the big map, the one that shows the whole route loop, the first one, that one, right, that you're holding up, you can see there's 4 substations on there. The project is called the Shelbyville Loop because it's looping all 4 substations together. That has a multitude of benefits. The main one is that it gives you them many options to route the power from substation to substation in the event something goes wrong and they need to loop the power one direction Additionally, this gets all the transmission between substations in-house with Prairie Power and Shelby Electric, as it's not currently. So that can overall be a benefit to the community, keeping it in-house.
Sure, follow-on question to that then is, who is Prairie Power? I don't know. So, I mean, we
Right.
work in Shelby County, our Shelby Electric is who we're familiar with, right? So how does this relationship?
Shelby Electric Cooperative is a member of Prairie Power. They used to be Soyland Power way back when they was out of Decatur 25 years ago.
Okay.
So they provide us, they do their generation and transmission cooperative, so they own some of their own generation in other places. They purchase our power for us, so the individual costs don't have to go out and make those contracts locally through Shelby Electric. They take care of all that. They bundle it basically with all the other co-ops that are within that are also member owners, and they also help with our IT department. They're integral in our substation designs, transmission work, other things like that. We've been a member of them for quite a while. And this is an extension, I think everybody knows, of the IHI expansion out there. We had to Prairie Power built that substation that's out there that provides power now to IHI Turbo. We switched that over, and this power line here will go around Shelbyville and tie our other 3 substations. One that feeds we have 2 substations that feed graphic packaging, and then we have 1 substation out there behind Walmart. So that's the tie to this one. In other places, I've got this going on in other areas, up in the Taylorville, Stonington, Edinburgh area. We're also tying all of our subs. So this is a long-term project to get all of Shelby Electric Co-op substations in our own, for lack of a better term, in our own family, instead of sourcing it out to somebody else. So we can switch transmission lines and transmission feeds instead of asking permission to transfer feeds when we need to.
How much will this increase reliability?
It should increase it quite a bit because right now, we're on the Ameren lines. They don't have, it's with all the power outages, we have, it will be internal to Prairie Power. So we're hoping with the new lines and tying only us together that it should improve our reliability as well. I can't say quantitatively that you'll never have an outage anymore because we just went through that just last week. But hopefully this will greatly increase our reliability too. Yeah.
So if you do this alternate route, and you're going through trees, you can do that, you can go through trees, or?
They'll be removed.
They would be removed. It wouldn't necessarily be that whole.
How many poles are you talking?
This is
All those purple dots are
Okay.
poles, would be poles.
Because before, when Teresa Bain talked to somebody, and they said there would be 12 poles.
I believe that might be the case with the straight
If you
route.
went straight through the property, that would be.
It doesn't look like the map showing them, so I couldn't give you a number off the top of my head. But yes, the trees would need to be cleared where it affects them. That's one of the main reasons why we like the preferred route, or the primary route better. It's a lot less trees being cleared, and then it's a lot less maintenance going forward, having to deal with regrowth and everything else associated with that.
Are these steel poles or wooden poles?
They should be primarily wood.
Wood in the ground, no
Yes, sir.
concrete foundation?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I don't know about the corner.
The corners could obviously change depending on the corner and the type of tension they need, but primarily this whole route's wood.
And the anchor, and because we'd have to have anchors, so I haven't seen the full design yet.
Like a guy wire?
The guy wires, the down guys to hold the tension so the poles won't go over. I don't believe they're gonna be steel poles, but they might be. You've probably seen them, the laminated poles. They might even be the laminated poles.
Mark, this will affect the farmer quite a bit, will it not? And aerial application also.
When I talked to Mr. Incamp,
James, yeah.
what he told me and what we had in an email is the poles would be a clearance for 60 feet from the ground, 300 feet apart, so you just take half mile, divide by 3
would the farmer be farming around?
The alternate.
It looks like 41 on the west side.
No, no, on the primary, all those little dots are not, those are not poles.
Sorry, so unless the purple dots.
I meant the big purple dots you see on the alternate route, they'd like to have those side dots. Those would be poles. There's a key on the bottom,
So, I might add, at 300 feet apart, in a mile would be 17.6. That is, our property is basically a half mile, so there should be between 8 and 9 inches, something like that.
Could be, and then one of the routes, if you look on, if it's right on the map, it's right next to the access, field entrance access road. So it can be switched a little bit one way or the other. It might be easier to farm at the edge of the field instead of keeping it in the way where your farmers are accessing for semis and the tractors and everything getting back in there to get the grain out and all of that. The other part is that's the alternate route. If you switch to the other one, that up through there is partial. This part here is through the road comes up here. So there's only about 2 that's here, and then this will be in the fence row that has trees already. Then it turns and goes back north in another fence row that should be between the property lines, so you're already farming around. You've got to stay away from the old hedgerow, basically, whatever you want to call it. It'll be in that particular line. So when the trees are gone, I don't know, you may actually gain a little bit and not tear your field equipment up a little bit when you hit something.
I just want to comment on one thing I think you said. James said 60-foot clearance. I think that, I want to just correct, that was not a 60-foot clearance. The pole would be 60 foot above the ground. The clearance would be between like 20 and 30 feet. I think the minimum the clearance they're shooting for is like 25, 24 at the lowest point of the roof. So I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, and Shelby Electric, we will not have distribution underbuild through that. It doesn't make, I don't have any reason to put distribution underbuild in there because I don't serve anything. And our Shelby Electric's power lines goes out and around and we'll tie back into it, but we don't like private right of way any more than anybody else does, but we won't be on those particular poles through your field.
Are there any plans for a substation on the farm property or near the farm property?
No. The most I've heard, I think, is there might be a switch in the future, but that wouldn't be on the farm property at all.
Maybe farther north?
Maybe farther north, away from the farm.
I don't have personally a need for a substation in there to serve that load in the area. We have, that particular area can be served by 2 or 3 different substations now, but it's on the distribution side, not on the transmission side. So Shelby Electric right now, as of this date. Now, with that being said, there could be other loads that we could pick up. You know, if a big load comes in that would require more power than what I can provide running, 15 miles on a distribution line, we could drop a substation in along there and build a substation at some point in time. So that's a possibility.
Would we know that before the law?
No, I wish I knew where all our loads were going to be coming in from for the next 10 years, because then we could really do a lot of planning on it. But I mean, we're planning on running back up through from here up to the north to pick up another one of our substations, and eventually get that back up to where I was talking about, to the Stonington, Mowequa area. So that's the long-term plan.
So the substation would be an easement or a lease, it'd be a purchase?
It'd be a purchase. We'd have to purchase, and we would typically purchase an acre of ground to try to put the substation and all of our stuff in. So a bunch of it.
The county farm side, so you're saying that the primary route you discussed with the landowners around the county farm?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And they're in favor of this?
The one to the north, yes, ma'am. That's the person.
The one to the north?
Correct. Yes.
So we need to kind of take into consideration not just our farm, but the landowners around the farm too, what benefits them.
I would appreciate that greatly as well.
But this primary route you're saying has the least
It has less anchors overall. When we designed that, we designed to try to get it against that field access, so it's not just going straight, cutting through the middle of the cultivated part.
It's also mud.
Oh, well,
It's
now
double
I'm hearing
effective.
that it does go through the middle of the farm.
Well, it goes through that field access, right? Only at the north part of it, that north section, does it go right through those, the whole half mile.
It's a whole half mile of farm.
That goes right?
Right.
Right, but there's a,
You can see on the map, looks like there's a field access. That's what we tried to follow when we placed that. It looks like a grassed area that isn't cultivated. That's the idea of putting it through that middle portion.
Are you talking about the yellow line or
No.
the gray line?
the yellow line is the property line.
The property line.
Okay, so the gray line, I mean, mine looks like it goes right through the property.
It follows,
Is there like is there a tree line here that I'm not seeing?
yeah,
I mean, sorry.
that's my thing. You go from here to about here, this is the area where the farmer drives in.
Okay.
Through here, so these poles would be through, this might be through,
No,
these
this
be areas.
This is not.
There's a place where the farmer drives
This is
in.
but it's going through this field.
This field,
It's going through this field.
but these, wherever that field is, where that farm is at, well, right?
Oh.
They don't farm through, they don't farm through dry.
So, can we get the order back in the ring, please? So, when I get on Google Maps and look at this, on the backside of the trees, there's something that's covered up that we can't see. And if you look at it on Google Maps, they'll actually only, probably a quarter of a mile out of the full half is what they'll actually take and intrude on tillable property. Because once you break north of the tree line, there's a waterway or a lane, and this is what you're talking about, that goes north, and just by guesstimation, it appears that it's roughly about half the distance of the whole parcel. So the intrusion would be through from the curve to the trees, and then if you see from the very northeast corner, there is a finger of trees that sticks down. The south edge of that finger is the north curve of that lane or waterway, whatever that is. So in reality, they are probably right that we would only have about a quarter of a mile that's tillable that would have poles on it, as they've got this one. But until you look at it without any marks on it, do you see that?
Yeah, it's hard to see on a printed copy.
So I'm confused as to why an issue that is so impactful to the farm is not coming through the farm committee, but rather coming through the budget committee. That being said, I hope somebody can help me understand the financial impact that this will have on the farm and what the easement ask is going to be, or do we even know? It looks like we have to give them an easement of 100 feet no matter where we go. So has there compensation been discussed on that, or is it just we have to hand you the dirt? And what does the farm committee say?
So the farm committee actually addressed this in public body comment, not in the body of the meeting. The budget committee addressed it on behalf of zoning issues. So, land use. That's why I took it to the budget committee. The budget committee, yes, there was questions from the committee about financial implications, whether if there would be a continuation of a an annual lease or anything of the nature. What would be the long-term ramifications of property destruction in the event of repairs? What would be the incurred cost of initial startup? Would there be payments to the county? Those are all questions that were asked in the meeting, and I'm hoping that if there's anything you can address on that.
Yes, I think I can answer a couple of those questions. So first off, on a yearly lease payment, there's no yearly lease payment. It's all paid up front, and just a normal compensation for the amount of easement ground. Usually the way it's calculated is like at a per acre cost. Because we haven't decided on a route yet, we haven't produced what that compensation would be. We produce all the documents after we decide a route. We use the acreage that we decide on and go from there. So whatever it would be, whatever 1,000 per acre times the amount of acreage, and that would be the total. That would be paid up front. As far as if there's any damages, Prairie Power does pay for damages to the ground. If there's crop damages, they pay that. They pay compaction as well. They usually use like a 4-year, the typical like 4-year scale for compaction. That's pretty standard.
And you can still farm underneath it. I mean, the right-of-way is still, the poles will be there. You'll still be able to farm underneath it and around it. So it's not like there's going to be 100 feet all the way down through there and it's going to grow up in grass and we're going to have PPI, Prairie Power would need to maintain it. It's still farmable. You can still do everything you want to with it. It's just, at that point in time, we just don't ask, things to be put underneath it, within the property, like buildings or something.
Right.
Because
We've gone from 60 feet in the air to 29 feet in the air, which I know enough about power lines, I knew 60 feet wasn't right, but now we're down to 29 feet in the air. We don't know.
60 feet is the height of the pole from the ground up.
Correct. That's what I knew was going to be the case. I knew that was more in line. But we still don't know how impactful it's going to be to the farm. The farm committee hasn't told us where they want it to go, having conferred with any of the people that are actually tilling the dirt. I mean, if we run it through this tree line over here so that we are less impactful on the land, what are we doing to the waterways over there? Because obviously those are waterways. We haven't taken any of that into consideration. I'm not comfortable voting on a direction of the routing until the farm committee weighs in heavily on this issue and addresses a bunch of concerns that still aren't being addressed because...
So, time out.
Well, he tried to answer how much it's going to pay us, and he didn't.
Right, so there is no vote tonight.
Okay.
This is a purely informational discussion. So, yeah, the farm committee could, zoning committee could review it, maybe possibly vote, which there's a bunch of overlapping members on these committees, I remember right, but sure, yeah.
Well, I was just going off of the request that we at least tell them which way we want them to go. That's where I said I wouldn't be comfortable voting because the request was made to determine the route.
The agenda doesn't call for it.
Sorry.
Just the agenda doesn't call for a vote tonight.
I had Cody back there.
With the alternate route and the removal of trees, what's the impact that's going to be?
Depends on the trees, quite frankly. I mean, some of these hedgerows are scrub oak, nothing to deal with really. Some of them are big giant trees. It just depends. So, I personally, if it were me, the center route, fewer trees, obviously. This other way, I really don't know how to answer without being out there on the ground. I've not been on this property. So, I do not mind going out there with whomever's in charge of that. We can go out there and look at it, take pictures and do whatever, but.
I would say that it's a lot easier to farm around a straight line than it is a curve. So if they're all in a straight line, it's a lot easier, to me, it's a lot easier to manage. Anyway, I had Mark, and then we'll go back here to Clay.
With Bobby talking about zooming in with Google Maps, it shows another aspect that we as the group that got together and viewed this at first, we did not do, and I appreciate that, Bobby, that you did that, because I just finally did it myself. And yes, it does make a whole lot more sense. But the whole idea, we come tonight, we want the presentation not for them to have to give it twice, so that we all would have an idea, because we had not decided particularly any direction. We wanted to hear their input.
Clay.
I'm just wondering if next time we talk about this subject, if you guys could have a PowerPoint, that way everybody be on the same page, because I think there's a lot of confusion.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's something we can do.
All will be in contact, or something like that.
Yes.
Tad.
I just have one more question. In addition to the county, how many landowners are you having to go through this same process? Or how many landowners on this project, if we make a decision, are also being impacted by that?
I believe it's in the ballpark of between 70 and 80. I think depending on the routing, it could change obviously a little bit. And one place or another, but I believe it's in the 70 ballpark.
And how many do you have agreements from?
At this time, we've been negotiating with a lot, but it's very early in the process. I don't believe we have many signed yet.
I've not met very many landowners yet. I've been dealing here in town of Shelbyville a little bit. We've not signed documents or gone to update them with that for yet. It's been informational at this point, just like everywhere else.
So based on that, you're still miles away from completing this thing. We're just a step in that.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
It's the same process we went through when we did the IHI edition. I mean, we had a couple meetings with that. We had PPI selected a couple different routes, and we wound up on not which was the preferred route, but another one that where Shelby Electric didn't have any lines. We went down through the bottom where it didn't affect as many people. It's just that area. Everybody around here knows you get down to the bottom, it floods all the time. So that's where we decided to. That's where the everybody agreed to go. This is strictly an informational meeting. I mean, that's what we want to make sure of. We want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And if anybody needs some more, everybody knows, they may not know me, but they know where the co-op's at. I'm usually there. I'll be more than happy to meet with anybody or a group, if that's even, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but if you want a PowerPoint, we have an area there in our meeting room that can accommodate quite a few people, so we could do a PowerPoint there. I put that out. I have talked with a few people on the board just in passing because we went to, it came up in a city council meeting that I was at, and did a couple little talks with some people that, when it was in the very early stages of doing this. But if you don't know where the route's at, we keep talking about this loop. Do you know where the route's at? Everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole route, the 9 or 12 miles or whatever it is. That's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, we've seen basically the start from somewhere around behind Monocle's, I think, and it loops up and around the airport and all the way up to that, I call it the Crooked Road there, north of the farm, and then it comes back down on the east side of 128, I believe, on the north side of the high school, or the east or west side of high school.
Well, okay, so there might be some. Let's just start at IHI Turbo. The plan is to go straight west there on I believe it's the north side of the old railroad right away, out to the overpass on 128. You go north to the 16, and then you go west before you drop into the bottom, to Robinson Creek bottom, you turn north there. Dr. O lives out in that area. There's a subdivision out there. You go north up there, you go across the bridge, and then you turn back east. And that's where you get into following the Crooked, not to the Crooked Road yet, but where it comes up to the south of the county farm. And it does go to the curve where it turns and goes south, and we turn north to go to the county farm. Then it hits our existing, Shelby Electric's existing three-phase, and then follows our existing three-phase line back around to the west of the co-op. And then instead of jumping behind the house that's west of the co-op and that, they're going to go almost to what we call our airport substation, which is behind the Walmart store. And then we have the proposed route is to come and go, I'll use the word meander, we're going to try to go southeast behind, east of Walmart, and then go to Farm Pride.
By Berkey's and Dollar
By
General.
Berkey's, behind Berkey's, then turn by Swafford Branch to get back out to 16, to meander to get in front of Graphic Packaging where our other substation is at, and then go from that substation where we've got existing transmission line back to the railroad right away to pick up one of our other substations that feeds Graphic Packaging, and then take it from there on the south side of the tracks all the way back to IHI Turbo, to the start again. Like I said, if anybody wants to see it more accurately, I'm available. You can call out to the co-op and ask for me, and I can I can walk through some of them.
And your main reason for such a large loop is because of the airport, correct?
That and because there's two roads out there. There's either the one by the airport or the next road. The 15, I think it's 1500 that goes, and it's a non-existent road, even though it shows it on Google. There's not a road through there. So it's either one or the other, and we can't, airplanes don't like tall poles.
Yeah, we've got maps, there's one in front of Mark there that
Yeah.
illustrates that the north tip of the line, it's nothing set in stone, it's just an idea, the idea of that. They could shoot a line straight north to municipalities to the north, and then there's also a line that would shoot straight south to go to communities and municipalities to the south, so it's a project that makes a lot of sense, but Mark.
Looking at the route, I think you're trying to stay in a lot of the right-of-ways, most of your loop.
Yes,
There's not very many properties that you're actually cutting across. Most of it's
Existing right-of-ways.
existing right-of-ways.
we have existing lines on most, well, I say most of them. Down along the railroad track, no, but there's already a Ameren transmission line through there. Where we come out to the highway, to the overpass, we'll follow our existing route that goes through private right-of-way now, back to the highway, which will follow our existing line, and then go up north, and then the county farm will be the first part of the private right-of-way in that loop. But then once we get all the way to out here west of the co-op and west of the high school, that's where we jump across the road where we have facilities on the west side of the road. We're going to jump to the east side of the road. We don't double facilities and have power lines on both sides. But where it makes sense, we'll do away with our poles and we will be underbilled on the existing transmission line, which is what we did down here at the IHI Turbo line. We put lines in underneath there to utilize, which helps us because we've got to keep the right-of-way clear anyway, or we try to. So there's no reason to have power lines on both sides of the road. We just don't like that, so there's no reason.
I'm just gonna bring this up. There's a cemetery at the farm, and the first line isn't close to the cemetery, but it's my understanding that there are people buried along the fence row, but we don't know where the fence row is at the farm. So I don't know if that would be a problem, how you would even find out where the fence row was,
I haven't been out there. When we have to pass through other cemeteries, we try to stay on either side of the
and
cemetery.
this is, I mean, I can
But I
show
don't
you
know.
where the cemetery is.
I don't know how wide that cemetery plot is. Is it over 300 feet?
Have you been out there?
No, I've not been out there to do that.
If you go, there are 4 poles out there, and that's the cemetery. But I'm thinking it could have been larger because of the amount of people that are buried there. There's between 79 and 82 people buried in that cemetery.
Is there?
And I don't know if
Is that actually plotted or platted, whatever the word is?
it's on the GIS.
It's on the GIS, so that's an actual, probably a boundary line that may or may not, we could find that with the survey that we have to do.
So as I'm looking at it right now, they're well.
Yeah, it's not close to it. I'm just thinking about if the fence row happened to be over where the tree line is, there could be bodies there. I don't know. Just
Sure, and that's something we thought.
A serious question, given history of some communities, would these be marked graves?
there's one.
Okay.
There's one that has a stone, but there's also, it's called the Puffer's Grave Plot, and all of the lots are marked. And there are actually 2 veterans, 2 Civil War veterans that
Let
are
me ask
there,
this.
and they are marked there. Their names
Is
are
there a person with executive authority that could take us out there where we could drive out there and take pictures of all this? You got keys to
I
the
think,
gate and all that?
yeah. Oh, there's no keys.
Well,
Just
okay.
drive
You know what I
out.
mean? Like,
Yeah, it's just open. There's nothing. Yeah, it's just ground. Yeah.
That'd be fine. And we
I'd
could
be
go out
glad
there
to
and take
take
pictures
you
of
out
it.
there. Yeah.
Okay. That'd be fine.
Jim knows how to get hold of them.
Yeah.
So are you referring to the burial grounds and the hedgerows, or the ones at Mills Field?
The ones in the cemetery?
What are you referring to? Because I'm a little bit confused on because the impact on the established cemetery is 0 right now. Are you referring to the burial grounds that are in the hedgerows?
Yes.
That are non-existent anymore?
Yes. I just didn't know if that would be a problem. Because we don't really know where they are.
Right.
We don't know where the fence is.
So there's only one hedgerow that this map would occur on, and that's the very north end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you got side by side or something, we go right across the wheat field and go look at it, but the only way I can know if you could identify something with a seismic or some sort of x-ray to see if there's anything left.
Yeah. I don't have any experience in that.
I think U of I does.
Yeah.
I've been told.
So you're saying they're not necessarily buried in the cemetery then, is what you're
Not
saying?
everybody. I was told that when the weather was bad, and, this is 1867 to 1958, okay? So when the weather was bad and they couldn't get back to the cemetery because you take the lane all the way back and it goes up to the cemetery. Okay? They couldn't get back there, the hearse couldn't, they just bury them wherever they could find a place. It was a poor farm. I mean, they did, yeah.
Okay, in the light of time, is there any other discussion for the group of the gentleman here for this discussion? Hearing none, I think we will move on. Thank you for your time, thank you for your information. We will take this to committee and hopefully generate a recommendation from the board with what we know right now. So basically, to kind of wrap things up, they won't know what kind of contract to propose until we determine what kind of route we want to roll. And so that's what the committee needs to address and move forward, so, okay.
I have one more question, sir, I'm sorry, I apologize. On this on an easement type document, how many signatories would there be, and do you know already who that would be, like chairman of the board, secretary, vice president, and so forth?
So it would be me and clerk as a witness traditionally.
We don't need the names right now, we need to know.
I'm just going off traditional documentation, typically the chair and then the clerk as a witness.
Feel free to call. Should be like to call. Ask for the engineer.
Ask for the engineer?
You get me.
Very good.
And I put my card with all the packets that I handed out. If any other questions come up out of this, feel free to give me a call. It's my cell phone. I'll be happy to provide any more information I can move forward.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So item 7 is the farm committee. Discussion and vote to approve. Item A is to dispose of wheat crop and surplus property. I entertain a motion to dispose of the wheat crop as surplus property. Motion made by Cody, seconded by Mark. Any discussions or questions on this matter? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item B is to accept the bid from South Central FS excluding liquid nitrogen, Warrior 2 insecticide, to Harmony Pass on 197 acres. Mark makes the motion to accept the bid with exclusions. Is there a second? Second by Carol. Discussion.
Yes, probably. As you'll see in the sheet I have here, it says warrant on it in the double crop soybeans. And on the email that we had sent to Jessica, we said we were taking the Warrior 2 out. Should that have been for warrant?
No, it was Warrior and Fungicide Pass.
Okay, because I didn't see that, if you don't mind, sir. Dave? Did you find something different?
Which on?
We were discussing that warrant and Warrior. So I guess my other question, Mr. Chairman, is this layout that came up, did I do it correctly as to what you wanted?
So you've got the product in there and the top. Total number is pretty appropriate. The fungicide application is missing the warrior, so I think you did it correctly.
Okay, I just need to check that one particular product.
Yeah, was the warrant in the South Central bid?
Yes, the South Central bid. Sorry?
Was the warrant in that bid? I don't have a
Yes,
copy.
yes, it was.
Yeah, the warrant was in the post because that was one of the comments I made, that the post application of chemistry for herbicides included a residual component. So therefore, yeah, we needed that warrant in there and not the insecticide, because we felt it was more or less going to break the budget we didn't see the necessity for it. So,
Well, we're over. With this spreadsheet that I was handed tonight, we cannot pass this.
I would like to bring people up to speed. When we took these bids, we sat and did some hand figuring for us, and so we could have just been on air someplace. Now they did the math. We had a smaller number than what I showed for total. Did not realize until we got to the meeting tonight that in a hard copy, it shows us over.
Chairman,
Dave?
can we lower our warrant rate to like 30 or 32 ounces?
no, my suggestion would be to remove the nitrogen stabilizer. That's a $2,200 cost.
Okay, then we would be under.
Then we would be well under,
Yes.
and the nitrogen stabilizer
The animal.
in terms of agronomy, it's an add-on. I've spread a lot of urea without it,
And we got moisture right now.
and we have ample moisture. It's just a stabilizer. So it would be, even my recommendation to amend, to remove the nitrogen stabilizer.
I'll make a motion that we remove the anvil as well in order to get our total cost underneath our budget.
Okay, so there's been a motion to amend the main motion to exclude the annual nitrogen stabilizer, in addition to all the other exclusions listed.
Second that motion.
Seconded by Mitch. Any other discussion?
I would just agree with you, and be planning a lot of week in my lifetime that this late in the game, we probably really don't need that anyway. That you know, time to get it applied in 10 days or so, whatever it's gonna be, so. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just fine.
In the opinion of agriculture, there is 1,000 different ways to cut a humongous pie. And this is one of them that could be debatable as far as a necessity in growing a crop. So with that said, we'll just acknowledge that it's debatable. It's not necessary because it's debatable, and exclude it. So, all in favor of excluding this in addition to the rest, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Amendments to the main motion carries. So the main motion will read as amended to accept the bid from South Central FS excluding liquid warrior Harmony, as well as the nitrogen stabilizer, 497 acres. Bringing the total to a figure, has anybody figured that yet? So if you take the 52,870.45, subtract 21,97.19,
$50,673.6.
50,000. Sorry? What was, what?
I just said we had 52,000, our budget was 52,300.
Three something.
No, it's 51,704.96.
No, what was our budget? What did we have in the budget? 52?
51,704.96.
Dave, will you read the number again of the 52,870 minus the 21,997?
It's 50,673.26.
Thank you.
I will make the correction in the spreadsheet that we sent out to everybody.
So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? So require a roll call vote. We're spending money.
Mark Bennett,
Yes.
Cody Brandt,
Yes.
Tim Brown,
Yes.
Carol Cole,
Yes.
Charles Davis,
Yes.
Julie Edwards,
Yes.
Martha Bernhaber,
Yes.
Clay Hardy,
Yes.
Annette Martin,
Yeah.
Tad Mahal,
Yes.
Keith McCormick,
Yes.
Tim Morse,
Yes.
Lori Nelson, David Ogden,
Yes.
Bobby Mormon,
Yes.
Sonny Ross,
Yes.
Mitchell Shep,
Yes.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item C is to allow board chairman to solicit cash bids prior to wheat harvest with the following criteria. Highest closing price on the close of the previous marketing day for UGM Shelbyville, Assumption Gulf, Westerville, and Premier County. I have a motion to approve the board chair to solicit cash bids. Motion made by Carol, second.
No, I got a question.
Second. Lori seconds. Discussion, Cody?
I work for Prime Unit, so do I gotta abstain from this?
You are not a decision maker for the company.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
It would be no different than if Mark was an employee of FS.
Okay, just making sure.
He's not the decision maker. Plus, that would be, I don't know if that would come out on SEI or not, but anyway, good point. Sonny?
I would make a motion to remove the qualifiers from that and not limit our ability to solicit bids on those three entities and just allow you to solicit cash bids.
Okay, so there is an amendment to the main motion to remove the qualifier of where?
At the hyphen,
Yes.
remove the back half of that, of letter C.
Oh, the entire, so remove the highest closing price from the close of the previous day, marketing day from TGM, Assumption Co-op, and Premium.
Correct. I'm not suggesting that we do not want bids from them. I'm just suggesting that we might be in trouble if we limit who we're allowing to bid. And by this motion, we would limit who we are allowing to bid.
Is there a second on the amendment?
What if we get a high bid from Sacramento, California?
Doesn't mean that we have to exercise it. It just means we have to take it.
What are you saying is we need to open the bids up no different than when we posted in the paper. If there was in the bidding process, it is, I'm going to try to find the right words. It is imperative that the bid selection is of the lowest or highest responsible bid. So yes, and a rail bid from South Dakota or a river bid from St. Louis wouldn't be responsible to the terms of our contract with our custom operator, even though we received the bid, is what he's pointing at. And I do agree, we shouldn't close the bid scope. So he's made a motion to exclude the qualifiers. Second. Is there a second? He seconds the motion. Any other discussion? Mark?
The one thing that we did do with the farmer was we did make it so that he could deliver to a local elevator.
Again, it falls back to the farm committee will be responsible to accept the most responsible bid. I'm not suggesting that we're going anywhere else. I'm just, and that would be up to the farm committee to make the most, accept the most responsible bid.
Actually, this puts the onus on the board chair.
I'm fine with that.
We could also have said he could take it to the closest elevator. It would have been easier for him.
That's not appropriate
But
for.
we had to have bids.
It's not,
That's what, yeah.
right, and it's not appropriate for the sale of county property to be done by somebody not of this whole scenario has been an extremely challenging situation because we can't solicit a cash bid for something we don't know what we have. It could, the week could yield out of 75 or 125, who knows? So if we knew what our the quantity of product to disperse, it'd be pretty simple. We could write a forward contract and bid it out and be done with it. However, we don't know what those parameters are, so we're trying to kind of create a scenario where we create and develop bids as more of the farmer, the individual farmer would do, with the acknowledgement of the board. So kind of creates quite a unique situation.
Hey, Bobby,
Sir?
how are you gonna determine when you're just soliciting a price, that you're going to be able to give him a quantity until maybe even if he got it monitored on the combine or actually delivered, or?
So, with the qualifiers of being the highest cash bid on the close of the following day, that means that no matter what happens the next day, it doesn't matter. The close of the previous day is going to dictate where it goes. What happens the rest of the day doesn't matter. They can widen their basis out 45 cents past everybody else, but it doesn't matter because we made the decision, that's where we're going.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily selling boosters, you're just getting a price.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why there's the qualifier on the previous day, on the close of the previous marketing day. I have Tad and Martha, Tad there.
So is the part of the highest closing price on the close of the previous marketing day being scratched? That's being scratched also? So now there are no qualifiers. It's just a cash bid. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what it's been.
Okay.
Tad?
Well, it was a similar question because we're tired like that. But I guess, can we revisit, tell me again what the second, what motion is? I don't understand the motion because the language doesn't make sense now. If we cut it off at the hyphen, we end the sentence with criteria.
So the original motion was the entirety of letter C. The amendment is to basically stop the motion at the hyphen, which would include the highest closing bid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the amendment would just be to allow the board chair to solicit cash bids prior to wheat harvest with the following, well, actually, with no following criteria.
Thank you, that's what I'm getting at. We made a motion to go up to the hyphen,
Yeah.
which reads, I don't understand it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to table this.
I have a motion to table.
Second.
Second by Martha. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. So the next one is discussion and vote to approve the county board chair to offer a position of zoning administrator with flexibility to potentially include EMA director that would include full-time benefits. So last week in the budget committee meeting when we addressed zoning, I ran it to the committee and we discussed the position and the possibility, the capabilities of us to fulfill a position both ways, as individual offices and as combined offices. And the basic consensus out of the committee was, well, if we find somebody that would be interested in both, we should create a compensation package that would address both. Traditionally, these positions are also appointed by the board chair. So in a roundabout way, if somebody called me and said, hey, I'm interested in this position, I can present that person to the board for approval of appointment and we'd have them filled. The question, and this is more, transparency and being open and upfront with everybody, is I never did like the idea of the board chairman just appointing somebody to these positions. That's the recommendation of the board without the board fully knowing what's on the back end as far as what their compensation level is, what their benefit package is, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I took it to committee. Committee recommended that I would have the flexibility to potentially combine to accommodate somebody that'd be looking for a full-time job if that arose. So when I put the advertisement out for the EMA and zoning, I'll put it in one text box, if you will, and basically saying seeking applicants for, and possibly combination together. So that, something to that extent, I'm sure it'd be worded a lot more eloquently, but something to that extent. So,
I like a motion, just so we can get to discussion.
yeah, motion by Tad, seconded by Sonny, discussion. Tad, do you have something for discussion?
Well, I do. So, combining them, what are the, I guess, either education or certificated requirements for both, if any? I don't know what those requirements or certifications would be, so they're two different lanes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are the actual legal requirements as far as somebody being certificated to do either or both?
So, up until 2 years ago, there was one person doing actually 3 jobs, and that was handling the CFS, all the transportation grants and stuff like that, as well as zoning, as well as EMA. The qualifications is something that's really undefined. I know when we did when the EMA committee and the zoning committee hired 2 individuals 2 years ago, they created a job description, and then advertised the job description. It really, as far as qualifications, if my memory serves me right, there's not particularly a qualification you have to have. However, one important quality is the ability to learn and be a self-driver, because it is an office all in itself. They are responsible for reporting to the board, as they are appointed by the board, but really their jobs are to make sure that the county is up to snuff, up to par with state regulation, the funds and grants that come through those different offices and such. Does that monologue answer a lot of questions?
Well, I would just be concerned that we had clear requirements for the application process, like to his point, what we expect, as well as clear and concise job descriptions. I'm in favor of filling both of these roles. I just want to make sure we had a conversation in public safety where we were trying to work on an EMA job description, and so if we can combine these two and make it justifiable for someone, I'm in favor of that. I just want to make sure that these are the requirements for the person, and we follow those requirements when someone applies, because that was an issue before, and then we have clear job descriptions.
Okay.
Well, part of the compensation package, is there any way to put aside money for trainings, just in case that there is something that they're not familiar with?
EMA budget already has training in it.
I think almost every budget.
Like for zoning, you can't, if it's budget EMA, can you put it for zoning?
So that's a person that would have to know what hat they're wearing that particular day. And that's what, I do believe that's what Jared did years ago, was he just kind of knew what hat he was wearing at what time. And managed those budgets accordingly. That's the best of my knowledge. Julie?
Personally, I'm not in favor of combining the 2 positions, but I do understand it's probably easier to find one full-time position with benefits than it would be 2 with no benefits.
Yeah.
But I think they're 2 very separate positions that the only thing they really have in common is that they drive around the county.
Yeah, like I said, it's when we hired the 2 directors 2 years ago, I feel we just thoroughly stumbled on 2 people that wanted part-time jobs, and it worked out fine. having some flexibility. And I guess part of it is, and we can table this to go back to committee. If we advertise 2 positions and we have an applicant on both of them, then would the board, I guess, in the flexibility part, the board be approving of a compensation package that would include benefits, which would be different than what we've had before. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking for direction on what I should do as the board chair. That's what I'm seeking. So, we do have a motion on the floor to approve the offered position with the flexibility as stated. I have a motion and a second.
Just another question. So if this passes, it isn't saying we're only looking for one person that's willing to fill those spots. We're saying if we find 2 people happy with part-time work and no benefits, we can fill zoning and we can fill EMA. This is just if somebody would be interested in both. That we would be willing to combine them and offer benefits of a full-time position.
Yeah, and it could, Eric, would you clarify, would this take any sort of budget amendment for benefits as far as retirement, insurance?
No, because those come out of a separate fund, and what they did in the past is kind of did a percentage, of EMA and zoning, and take it out of those 2 budgets, they both come out of the general fund, but just to budget it to each office, kind of based on how many hours that person's going to work which part. But all the benefits come out, they're budgeted separately, the group insurance, IMRF, Social Security, don't come out of each office budget.
So the benefit part of it would basically just be already installed. So, any other discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries to allow the board chair to offer the position of zoning administrator flexibility potential, including the main director that would include full-time benefits. Okay. Number 9. Discussion and vote to approve reimbursement from ARPA administrative line item for special prosecutor services to Moultrie County up to $30,000. I have a motion to take the reimbursement from ARPA.
So moved.
Martha makes a motion. Can I get a second? Jeremy seconds. Discussion. Any questions that, Tad?
So where are we at this point on the cost? So we're running up a bill daily, right?
Yeah.
So where are we at this point on what the impact's been?
You know where we're at up to current as far as what the expense of the special prosecutors are up to current?
The answer in short is no. I wish I could tell you exactly where it is. I've sat down with the state's attorney from Moultrie County. So we have 2 special prosecutors that the court ordered to represent, and the duration of that order is subject to the court's discretion. One of those special prosecutors, Tracy Weaver, is the sitting state's attorney for Moultrie County. Because she's compensated from the state of Illinois, there's not a charge associated with her. The second special prosecutor is Elizabeth Dobson. Ms. Dobson is an exceptionally well-qualified attorney who's done a fantastic job. But before I go on with that, could I thank Mrs. Cole for that insightful prayer that she started this meeting with? I thought there was lessons in that for all of us, and I didn't want to forget that, so thank you, Mrs. Cole. But getting back to the special prosecutors and the question that you posited is, what is it? In the last 2 weeks, we've, I should say 2.5 weeks since I was sworn in, the jail was at about 37 people. We got it down to 22, mostly by shipping people out to the Department of Corrections. We got 3 more going out tomorrow. There's an inherent cost that's associated with that. There are a lot of cost savings that will come. We have a murder case that is going to be tried come June, come hell or high water, because that particular defendant's been in the county jail for over 1,000 days. We have, I'd probably say, more than a half a dozen detainees in the jail that are awaiting their day in court that have been there for at least 200 days. As a state's attorney, I have a legal obligation to ensure that the constitutional rights of the accused are protected in addition to doing the prosecutions. That means we cannot allow people to languish in our county jail. Now, I provided to you all a report before I came today, but that report didn't talk about prosecution statistics. The reason I'm mentioning this to you, because it's in the grand scheme of many of these things, there's a litany of issues to get around, and I don't want anybody to take that report to say that it is an indicia of some failure of my predecessor. On the contrary, this backlog of cases that we have goes back 2 administrations ago. So it's not something that happened overnight, but it's something that grew and exploded. And the timing of the departure of Ms. Cronky to my entry into the position left a major hole with a series of defendants that have speedy trial requirements. So the Constitution of the United States, something that we all probably hold dearly, mandates that people don't just sit and languish in jail while they wait trial. Because of the speedy trial requirements of several of the defendants who are in custody, we're pushing through those cases. As a result, what I can tell you is that the court's order doesn't have a termination point, but my hope is to bring that to an end either at the end of this month or the middle of next month. That's what I perceive to be the time frame. I also anticipate entering into a intergovernmental agreement with Moultrie County so that when they're in need of services and assistance, that we can provide that, A, as a thank you for the work and the effort that those 2 excellent prosecutors have brought to Shelby County, but also to facilitate a potential reimbursement to our county for our services. So we're having those discussions, but right now there's an immediate need to solve a litany of problems. Yesterday, I learned that there's 3 separate federal lawsuits pending against the county. I had a meeting this morning with the outside attorneys that are representing the county in that matter. And as anybody has any concerns about that, at least from an economic standpoint, they are funded by the insurance policy that we have. However, the risks that are attendant to those lawsuits is rather substantial. Even if the ultimate judgment is paid for by the insurance carrier, the effect on our potential insurance rates moving forward could be rather significant. So I don't have a magic number for all those things. I've only had 2.5 weeks. And if we follow Ms. Cole's advice to use prudence and diligence in how we approach the problems that are in front of us, which I'm going to take away from this meeting in my efforts and my duties, and if I can get to you a specific dollar amounts on any of these things, I certainly will. I know that there's a couple of agenda items that some people in the public have concerns about. I want to be clear that just about every day I'm here, the issue with the computerization is that this is the type of thing that should have been done many years ago. My office, before I came down here, operated on a platform very similar to this for the last 10 years. So I'm talking about a technology leap that is in essence eclipsed by dramatic changes in how things get presented in court underneath the existing system that the court uses by integrating the prosecution's office into what the courts uses and our public defenders using. I want you to think about this. Our public defender is on a platform that the state's attorney is not. And they have and it's necessary for them to do that. And what these allow us to do, there's modules that are within the system that allow us, the prosecution to make its notes with its cases, the defense making their notes to their cases in the public defender's office, and the court being able to make its notes blind to the other ones. But for documents, everything is all common and available so that we can expedite the judicial process. It may not sound like much, but if you call me up and say, hey, I represent, I'll use Joey Bag of Donuts, I'm from Chicago. So if you say, yeah, I represent Joey Bag of Donuts, I got this case. I got to say, all right, hang on a second, I'm going to go outside, I'm going to get the file, and I'm going to piece through these things, and I take this file out, and then I go back to my office. It presumes that, one, I'm going to find the file. Not every file we've been able to locate. So we're going to the clerk's office to regenerate the documents that have been filed with the court, and going to the sheriff's office to get copies of police reports associated with particular defendants. All of this doesn't happen immediately. I wish I could tell you that I'm going to wave a magic wand and 800 and some odd cases is going to disappear tomorrow. It's not going to. What I am going to be able to tell you, if you ultimately look to some of the results that we're having, and I haven't given you every statistic about every person, and that's because I'm spending more time getting the job done than talking about it. So with respect to your answer or your question, the numbers that you have in there are I guess, best guesses. And I think that would satisfy the court's orders. But we can't undo having those special prosecutors. They were actually appointed 1 minute after Ms. Kroenke departed from her office. She had given an advance notice as when she was going to go, and the court appointed those two special prosecutors to be effective the very next minute. So they then came in and had a pile of cases. Well, it makes no sense for me to say, you who have just spent a month working through that pile of cases should abandon those pile of cases and then recreate the same wheel again. And that's why there's this transition period. Hopefully that answers many of the questions. There was a Facebook page that was somehow deleted before I took office. I am unlikely to recreate that same Facebook page. I'm not a Facebook person. When I have time to worry about Facebook is when I'll spend some time on that. But until then, I'm going to focus on the cases that we have, the backlog, what needs to get done, and to do those things as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And thank you, Mrs. Cole.
So the use of the ARPA funds is to preserve the state's attorney's budget, if I'm going to say that correctly. And it's already been budgeted. In the budget, in the ARPA budget, there is an administrative line item, and there is, to the point of the next one, there is project line items. So these funds are already budgeted for these things. They're just at the disposal of the board. So, do I have a motion in a second?
Well, I think we had it, but I asked a question I didn't get an answer to. Thank you for the explanations, but I still don't have a dollar amount on where we're at. That's what I'm trying to understand, is how much have we spent? So we're not paying for the state's attorney for Moultrie, but we're paying for the other attorney. What other expenses are involved in this request besides somebody's salary?
Well, there's, from the standpoint of the computerization of the office, one of the things that was necessary for me to get on the same platform as the court is I acquired a number of desktop computers to operate the system in our offices, as well as what I received as advice for the balance of the computer needs. There's still other computer needs that are necessary. So in addition to the computers, which I think I submitted a payment that I had made, roughly $5,800 for the computers that I, found and determined were necessary to get us to that next step. Their scanning doesn't sound like much to scan a document, but multiply a document by, in a given file, there might be, 50, 80 pages, and multiply that by 850.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, but it is a separate line item. So I'm on just the 30,000. That's the next item.
I would have to
Computerization
speculate.
is a separate expense that was in the finance committee. That doesn't have anything to do with this topic.
With
So
respect,
I'm asking what we're spending, like, what are we actually responsible for paying for Moultrie County? But I understand the judge pointed it, and we have to have that.
Yeah, we're responsible for the assistant state's attorney. So Moultrie County Assistant State's Attorney is not a, she's an employee of the State's Attorney's Office, so since being that she was appointed to special prosecutor, we need to reimburse Moultrie County for her services.
That's what I'm getting to. So getting closer to my answer, right, is how much is that person paid on a monthly basis? Like, what's our cost then? Because 30,000 over even 2 months would seem like an awful lot of money.
Well, this says up to.
Right, but we've talked about scanning, we've talked about computers, none of that has to do with this topic. This is one person's employment.
I think that's up to until she's done, not up to just
No.
today.
Yeah.
That's until she's
it's
done,
a
right?
guesstimate as to by the time that she departs to go back to Moultrie County on a permanent basis, and not more than that. And the offset to it is that from January 30th to roughly, I think the 24th of February, there wasn't the expenditure for Mr. Scott, and there also wasn't the expenditure for Nicole that period of time. However, the former state's attorney cashed out 6 weeks of vacation pay for everybody in that office. So that 6 weeks, if you can imagine, we got an overlap, a double dipping of that expense in that corresponding period of time. So the budget would otherwise fall short, come the end of the year. So I wish I could tell you, as of today, it's $12,682.16. I don't have those numbers because I don't have them from Moultrie County. And if you would indulge me, I'd be happy that when I get that number to send out, just as I did the status report, to send out to the board what those expenses are when they come in, so that it's not a surprise to anybody.
Sure, yeah, no, and I apologize for a lot of the questions. One, it's a lot of money. Two, the status report was just delivered to us today, even though you wrote it almost a month ago. So some of this is all new news. So.
Okay. Well, all right, so I apologize to you for, I'll get you another status report and then we can go from there.
Also, does this $30,000 include Ms. Dobson? So there's actually 2 people being paid in that?
No,
The
it's one
assistant
person being
state's-
paid, 2 people working.
The state's attorney, Tracy,
Uh-huh. Oh, and then
is-
Elizabeth, so there's not a state's attorney, or assistant state's attorney from Moultrie County? It's just the state's attorney and the special prosecutor?
No, they're both special prosecutors.
Okay, gotcha. I understand.
they're both special prosecutors. One is the SA, one is the ASA,
All right.
from
Okay.
separate counties.
Okay.
The ASA is needing refunded,
I get that.
the county, Moultrie County needed refunded for her.
May I speak to that one more bit? Ms. Dobson has done a heroic effort. And as I mentioned, she's a great lawyer, but she's putting in a lot of hours. I was here one night, and normally I'm in my own office. I was the last one to leave, and I walked out the door at about 7 o'clock one night, and she was still there, and I'm like, don't you know you work for the government? And we laughed about it, but the reality of it is that because of the demand of all the things that we have to do just to keep up, and there's a pestilence in this county of methamphetamine use and sale and distribution. And I call it a pestilence because every file I pick up has something to do with methamphetamine. And as that drug is, polluting our society, the sheriff's office is becoming busier and busier. And there's several cases in the office where someone has died in this county, or multiple people have died as a result of someone having consumed methamphetamine and then gotten behind the wheel of a vehicle and killed someone. That pestilence reverberates case after case after case. And so between Friday and Saturday, I get the affidavits of probable cause for the arrests that were made by the sheriff's department, which have to be decided within 48 hours, by statute. So I have to make a determination of probable cause, and then the court has to make a determination of probable cause. After I make that determination, all has to happen within 48 hours. And I can tell you that jail is busy come Friday and Saturday. And the primary reason for that is that the sheriff is doing an outstanding job in getting his deputies out there, to address these things. He's only got so many people, but he's keeping that jail full with people, and I'm trying to get the jail empty, and many of these people sent out to DOC or to drug court, or find some just resolution for their cases. With that many cases, you have to look at it in light of the county only has 1 week a month for jury trials. This is very new to me. Historically, if I didn't get a result from an opposing party, I'm like, let's go to trial. We're just going. And there was, in the federal court system, there's always, time for that. In the state court system up north, there's always time for that. Here, I got 1 week a month for jury trial. That's it. So I mentioned this murder case that we have. It's going to go to trial by June. If it doesn't go to trial by June, it only will be because of delays caused by the defense. Having said all of that, with 850 cases, I can't take everyone to trial. It's just a practical impossibility. So it requires some communication on my part, and and this goes to the expense of the county in running the jail. Until they're sentenced to go to the DOC, it's a burden and expense to the county. Once they're sentenced, then it's an income to the county until they actually arrive at DOC. The litany of issues that the sheriff has brought to me in the last 2.5 weeks, they're serious. They're complicated by some of the pending federal lawsuits that I only became aware of yesterday. So trying to get my head wrapped around all these different issues is pretty significant, and there's no magic switch to say this is what you have to do first. So I'm just trying to triage to get through those things, and then when I get that under control, then I'll try to get back to some kind of publication on convictions and so forth. But until then, you'll probably get a monthly summary from me that'll summarize it. But I'm not even at the point where that even matters. I'm just looking at it case by case and trying to address them as quickly as I can.
So I think I'd like to...
There's a question over here.
Yeah, there's one point that he made that's really important. I feel that when he said triage, this is bridging the gap in the utilization of our special prosecutors to bridge the gap to get the state's attorney's office up and rolling the way it needs to be.
I believe he also addressed public body comment of what happened to the 2-month salary gap with the double dipping of the 6-week cash out of the employees at that office.
If I can just speak to that one thing. I don't take any position on what was right or wrong from my predecessor. Whatever her reasons were her reasons. I just look at it as a fact that has to be addressed now. What we have today is a situation that has a lot of urgent needs to it, and I'm doing what I can to address all those needs.
vacation days already budgeted in the state's attorney's budget?
No, but notwithstanding that, people who are hired, after this will incur some vacation benefit. So, for instance, if the administrative assistant had 6 weeks of vacation pay, the new administrative assistant may not necessarily accrue 6 weeks of vacation, but they might have, 2 or 3 weeks, which then the budget for that time will have already been spent because it's already been cashed out. So the end result on a net basis at the end of the year, there'll be that shortfall. And it's that overlap based upon a decision that was made, prior to Ms. Cronke's departure.
Questions?
I'm just gonna say, to be 1 month into a year and cash out 6 weeks of vacation time, which would be, is,
Well, it was actually 5 months into 6 months, 5 months, fiscal year.
okay.
Sonny?
So I would struggle to be comfortable voting to give, when I see a quote that's up to 30, I assume when I vote yes, I'm just going to spend 30. Let's just be honest. If we knew, to Mr. Mayhall's point, what this person was costing us and what we expect this is going to be, or if we had some better definition of the impact that the state's attorney's budget has suffered. I see an ask, I don't see a great deal of justification. That's my concern with this line item and amount. If there's justification that I've just overlooked, I'm willing to hear that. I know the state's attorney has their own budget to do things like this, but if we throw this 30,000 at it without knowledge of where we're going to be at the end of this 30, are we going to be back here in 3 months and need to spend another 30,000? Is 30 enough? We don't have an idea of what the impact to the state attorney's budget has been.
Would you like me to address that?
Sure.
I get my fingers and toes out, and I'm told I got 10 of each. I wasn't very good with math, but what I do know is I take roughly $100,000, and I divide that by 12 months, and I multiply that by 2. I'm not too far off, and then something's backed in for a contingency. So if they've been here a month and a half, and they might be here for another month, that's your 2.5 months. Some people would say that's a scratch of the ass method. I might agree with them, but that's as close as I'm going to be able to give you, because I don't have the budgets for Moultrie County, but I do know this. We've got a great asset here in Ms. Dobson, and to use that asset for the betterment of the county, is great. I've hired another assistant who is going to be here. She broke her kneecap last week, had to have emergency surgery, and so the county should be glad to know that she did that before her insurance kicked in. So there's no expense to the county there. But nevertheless, what you call the justification for it is predicated upon, looking at, this in a kind of a foggy big picture. But I would be remiss to say to you in 6 months, hey, I blew past the budget because we didn't think of this, and this. So part of fronting some of these issues is so that you're aware that we have this issue. And frankly, I don't have any choices with respect to payment on the special prosecutors, because Judge Harlow, she's ordered it.
So I think the important thing that I didn't click until now is using the ARPA funds to pay for the special prosecutors is in addition to the state's attorney's salary as it is intact, in addition to the assistant state's attorney's salary as is intact because we have special prosecutors still currently working with the new state's attorney. So, yes, there is a budget for state's attorney and assistant state's attorney, but there wasn't enough budgeted for the special prosecutors. Therefore, we should use the funds out of the ARPA and administrative line and cover those special prosecutors.
And I appreciate that, but with all due respect, I'm not allowed to bring such an ask to this board without better justification. I can't come to you and say I want to spend up to $50,000 to buy a vehicle. That's my only concern with this, is that voting for an up to number without knowing what the numbers are, I'm concerned. Go ahead.
Sure, so, bottom line, I understand we have to reimbursement. So, to clarify the bullet point here, right, point A, we're seeking reimbursement from ARPA to reimburse Moultrie County, right? Moultrie County is still paying Ms. Dobson, correct?
That's correct.
So she is still being paid. Are they knocking on our door right now saying we need our money back right now?
They're telling me that we need to have some resolution to that. They are, in as much as they've been ordered by the court to do that, there's no involuntary servitude in this country. So they could theoretically say, Judge, we're done. And that presents a whole different set of circumstances and problems.
Sure, like I said, I don't misunderstand the fact that we owe this, right? That the judge ordered. I don't misunderstand any of that whatsoever. But a more finite number up to this point, whether that's two reimbursements, right? Once been our tab up to a certain point, and then we'll finish paying our tab.
So maybe table this until you get the budget from Moultrie County?
It's up to the board. I don't have a say as to how you operate.
So, to bring that to a wrap, I'll come back to that. Obligating funds out of ARPA to pay for the special prosecutors, and if we put a limit as of current up to $30,000 on it, that means that we would be obligating those funds to Moultrie County, and they would know by board action that we have the funds and we have obligated to reimburse them. So we can maintain this relationship that we've got right now of them working for us. If we would not do this, they could prospectively, like you said, say, well, you guys haven't agreed to pay for any of this stuff by any means and stretch of imagination, so we're going to pull back and say we're done. That is a possibility. But if we agree to obligate, the dollar amount of $30,000 up to, then they know at least when we get to this stage, this hour figure on Ms. Dobson, then they know that we're starting to breach a threshold. Martha?
To Sonny's point, Sonny, when I understand what you're saying about what the up to and if you want a truck. If you do up to $1 amount in a truck and you can get this base level truck or you can get this, all decked out truck, that's one thing. We are gonna know what hourly rate we owe for Ms. Dobson, correct?
That's correct.
And that's gonna be researchable based on Moultrie County. That's gonna be public information, what her salary is. And you calc it out in the number of hours. So if it's up to 30, it's not like Mr. Hanlon's gonna go, well, she makes this, but I think she's worth that. And I've got up to 30, so I'm gonna tack on this extra dollar amount because they gave me up to 30 and I'm gonna make doggone sure I spend that 30. I think it's two entirely different situations. And to Bobby's point and Mr. Hanlon's point, she's doing a fantastic job. He needs the help right now. If we don't pass this tonight and we can't take action on this for another month, and they want, a month's worth of reimbursement, and we tie his hands from doing that, and they say, see you, we're out of here, now we've got an even bigger problem than we have right now. And I don't think we want to put ourselves in that position.
Call the vote.
Can I say one thing to that, Bobby? The discussion was had, and he said there's a little bit of contingency in there. It was put at the 30 mark so that we didn't have to come back in 2 months and say we need to amend this. It was, with that little bit of cushion, not knowing, so that we didn't have to have this discussion again.
Mark had to call the vote. This is a expenditure of funds, so it'll be a roll call vote.
Mark Bennett,
Yes.
Cody Brands,
Yes.
Tim Brown,
Yes.
Carol Cole,
No.
Julie Edwards,
Yes.
Martha Farnhaber.
Yes.
Clay Hardy,
Yes.
Annette Martin,
Yes.
Tad Mayhall,
Yes.
Keith McCormick,
Yes.
Tim Morse,
No.
sit down,
No.
Lori Nelson,
Yes.
David Ogden,
Yes.
Bobby Orman,
Yes.
Sonny Ross,
No.
Mitchell Shuff,
Yes.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries 14 ayes, 3 nays. Carol,
Carol, Sonny, and Tim.
Tim, and Sonny.
So item B is the same exact discussion for a file scanning project. It's using the same funds out of ARPA, just a different line item. Entertain a motion to approve the ARPA funds for the scanning project. Martha makes the motion. We have a second. Second by Dave. Discussion. So on this part of it, using the ARPA funds, which is pretty, already been budgeted, it's just a simple function of the board allocating up to $15,000 for the scanning project, which there again is a project that, to my understanding, is not a known factor. There's not a lot of scanning projects that happen. There's a lot of variables such as the number of documents, the hours spent, the hours spent by individuals to collaborate and organize all the files. So is there anything I missed on that?
No, I think that accurately sums it up. And the key part with the scanning from my private practice experience is that first you got to organize that file. Now, for some reason, people feel compelled to use a stapler, and you can't scan documents like in a mass feeder. So there's just this little tedious task in removing, the 20 or so staples between all the different little sub pieces of paper in there. And it's one of those little tedious things that just takes time. The other, tedious portion of it is that once you have it in a larger scannable, position, is then taking from either a single PDF or scanning different PDFs, but then cutting that and putting it into an organized fashion electronically. The system used by the court here facilitates it when it's broken into pieces, but to put it in one big chunk is a very hard thing to then properly use the system that the court has.
Okay. So I had a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions, discussions? Lori?
On part A, it was discussed a time frame, but on part B, is there any guess of a time frame? I'm just trying to figure out where the 15,000 came from.
Well, it basically comes from my experience in private practice and doing something similar in my own office. I personally, spent, probably $25,000 to do that in my private practice. But, on a comparative basis, I only had like 40 federal files, but a federal case, the saying goes, when I make a federal case out of it, that's because the stack of paper, is 1,000 miles high. So 40, federal cases that I might have had that I scanned would be, comparable to 850, cases. And so I looked at it from that perspective and tried to put some efficiency into it. But that was what I was willing to, part with my own money to accomplish in private practice. Now, in private practice, there's a reward for doing that. Here, the reward is efficiency, not necessarily, you know, I can't charge the defendants for my time. You know, if I did, I don't think I'd collect. But that's the analysis.
So the timeframe would be the same, maybe a month, month and a half, or are you talking from weeks?
I talked to probation because they went through a similar scanning process, and it took them about 8 months. And they were dealing with about the same number of files that we have. Now, I don't know what processes that they used, and so I was trying to drill down, you know, that part of it. But I don't think, from my own personal experience, that it should take that long. And it may be that they just didn't have, you know, a dedicated person to do that and get it done.
So will this $15,000, is that going to go toward hiring someone dedicated to just scanning, or?
Yes. And it may not be a hire. Most likely it'll be a, you know, contract for service to an outside entity to do it. And the groups that I've used in the past, you know, could probably do that. I don't have a quote, but what I did do is I took a sample of roughly 4 boxes to, you know, had them in files, and then we used that. It took a week to scan the 4 boxes. 4 boxes represents roughly a drawer in the state's attorney's office, and there's about 12 drawers. So if I, you know, look at that, that'd be about 12 weeks, which would not be 8 months. I just haven't seen the invoice, you know, for that yet.
I guess I don't understand why this can't be done out of the state's attorney's budget.
Well, the state's attorney's budget is general fund money, and this is a project that he's asking for to be done out of ARPA, which is grant funds. So we're getting improvements in the office without spending tax dollars per se. They're not free money because it's still grant funds, and there's no such thing as free money. But we're using the grant funds instead of tax dollars out of the general fund. So the more we can do that, the better off we are, especially if we're creating efficiency and we're using the services from other counties and special prosecutors. So it all kind of lumps up into, you know, improvements to the offices. Question, Tad?
Yep, so two questions. One, you talk about an outside entity. We just recently had a discussion about outside entities having access to data in here, so this is sensitive information for sure. What protections do we have to make sure that outside entities don't have sensitive data?
Well, fortunately, I have all the equipment in my former office, and I can have that as a secured location under, you know, lock and key for the purpose of just simply the scanning process. To ensure that those files, you know, are properly accounted for, every one of them has been inventoried, and there's no outside access to that. So as long as I maintain some kind of control either there or have them come to my office here and actually do the scanning here. The difference is the scanners that are available to us come from the circuit clerk's office. They have a number of different scanners. They scan, I think, like I don't want to, you know, exaggerate, but they're slow scanners, but they're effective if you got a couple of sheets at a time. When you have, you know, say a large file and there's more to it, those scanners are inadequate. So there's one scanner that in my office that would, you know, here that would be acceptable, but at the same point in time, it doesn't have the right interface to our computer system, so I can scan all day long, but I can't get the scans out. And this is part of the technological problem of the office, is it's truly operating, you know, 15 years ago. I wish I could say something different than that. I'm happy to sell the humorous as that may sound, you know, any person that I deal with also requires some bond from them to ensure that I wouldn't have a situation where something's lost. When it comes to the particular documents that I had in my sample, one of the things that I you know, have with that is as they're scanned, I'm getting an electronic version immediately sent to me. So the benefit to me is that, you know, I'll have that, so I'll have that, you know, retained copy. With respect to the other things, I was very selective in those test files to make sure that there wasn't something in there that was not necessarily a public record or something that's already been disclosed to a defense counsel. So when you talk about highly sensitive information in the state's attorney's office, when a defense attorney comes into my office and says, hey, I want to, you know, have the discovery of what the case file is, that the discovery response is, here, have everything. We've got nothing to hide because we're the state. And I shouldn't even have to look at the documents to tender them. And part of this scanning allows the defendants to file a motion report and say, Judge, you know, enter an order of discovery, and which is common in criminal cases. I can push a button and say, here you go. And we're done with that. There's probably one exception to that. And that deals with pornographic charges. There cannot be a release of that to anyone, and those files, those electronic files, are not to be copied. When it comes to what's top secret, are the thoughts in my mind and our application of arguments, you know, to a particular case. But keep in mind, in this county, we don't have a grand jury, so there isn't the top secret grand jury testimony or activity, because in the northern counties, almost everything is indicted by grand jury. Here we use a form of charging called information. And so you can only be charged in a criminal matter either by information or by grand jury indictment. So the information charge says, this is what happened, we get an affidavit. Becomes public record at the time of the arrest. The police reports are public record at the time of the arrest. So if someone were to think, oh gee, I'm going to, you know, have the top secret information because I scanned these records, most of it that's going to be in these files will be public records anyway. The things that are unique to a scanning operation are not necessarily the same as the highly sensitive information that I might have. An example might be a driver abstract report, criminal history report. Those things are not public, you know, for dissemination, or the investigative material. So the office is running several, you know, investigations in concert with the Illinois State Police and with the Sheriff's Office. That investigative material, until the time of charge, that's top secret, and it's mostly resides within the province of the sheriff and the state police, or maybe another, you know, police department. They may have shared with me certain information from an investigation which is outside of the scanning operation.
Sure, yeah, I understand that. I understand discovery. It's more the victims' names, the victims' rights and victims' protections that I'm seeking as outside entities, which is right now currently undefined. How are we protecting?
Okay, when it comes to the victims, from the police reports to the indictments, to the documents in the files to be scanned, most victims are identified by initials if they're minors. So if someone is an adult victim, their name's in the public record.
But not till trial.
I'm sorry, not the what?
Not till trial?
No. Not all. There may be exceptions to that. What I'm talking about, what I'm going to be scanning, is the stuff that will allow me to facilitate the in-courtroom discussions that is mostly in the public realm.
follow-up question to that, sorry, is, so this is 15,000 now just to get caught up. What are we looking at going forward every year? This is a recurring item?
No, it won't be a recurring. Once we get caught up, then everything just gets scanned as they come, and we're in the 21st century.
But I guess what I'm saying, you said we don't have the equipment here.
We don't have the equipment here to handle a large-scale scanning operation. We do have equipment for ongoing activity. So those are the small scanners that the clerk's office uses or has used.
This is the point, is a lot of this stuff that's being brought to the board, it could be better explained at a time, we save a lot of this time. No fault to your own, but like I say, we get a line item with 5 words in it, it's hard to understand.
Yeah, this was.
Yeah, I think I had referenced something about the scanning operation in my status report, which
I apologize, we got that today.
yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't know. What is today, Thursday? This week, it was brought to my attention well, prior to Tuesday, because I got on the agenda. So it was brought to my attention that we could use ARPA funds to accommodate these projects versus using taxpayer dollars. So they got injected on the agenda. Any other questions? Carol?
So would these files be taken out of the courthouse? Or would they be?
If I determine that it's necessary, yeah. But I'm the custodian of the records that are in the province of the state's attorney's office.
So there's, in practices in the past, the record could go, well, case in point. If the courthouse closed and judge has Zoom court, those records leave the office as of current. Those records would leave the office to go home with the state's attorney because they're going to have court no matter what, so they're going to Zoom from wherever they're at. So those records, that file, would go with the state's attorney, so they would have that when they're Zooming in from wherever they're from. So that's actually not uncommon. I actually learned of that one last 2 weeks ago or something like that. So, as he said, what'd you call it? You're a keeper of the record or?
The custodian.
Custodian of the records.
Of the state's attorney's office.
Yep. And that,
So this is not reinventing the wheel. Other counties do this. We're just trying to play catch up.
yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing any of that. I'm just trying to understand, again, we're being preached to create transparency. We don't ask these questions and get it on the record.
Yep.
We're void of the transparency.
Dave.
So I guess in that transparency part, it's kind of ironic. I ran the numbers real quick, and the 6 weeks of vacation that was paid out to that office equated to 41,000 and some change. Because it was asked earlier, well, why doesn't it come out of his budget? They weren't paid. Well, they were. And he's fallen short. And to me, it's very ironic that 2 numbers that he came up with out of the air, you know, it works. It keeps us in balance.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion in a second?
We have a motion in a second. Call vote. Roll call, please.
Mark Bennett.
Yes.
Cody Brandt.
Yes.
Tim Brown.
Yes.
Carol Cole. Julie Edwards.
Yes.
Martha Fernhaber. Clay Hardy. Annette Martin. Tad Mayhall.
Yes.
Ethan McCormick.
Yes.
Tim Morse.
No.
Lori Nelson. David Ogden.
Yes.
Bobby Orman.
Yes.
Sonny Ross.
No.
Mitchell Shutt.
Yes.
Jeremy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes 16 ayes, 2 nays, Morse and Ross.
Okay, so item C.
Discussion. But anyway, I entertain a motion to make the FOIA officer by Keith, second by Dave. Discussion, questions, comments?
I'm going to make a comment.
Yeah.
I happen to notice that you're saying, as a FOIA officer for the county board, meaning this public body itself, not for the county. do for the county or for the county board. But it would seem to me that the county needs a FOIA officer, and frankly, I don't know who that is.
Actually, a long time ago when FOIA happened, each department has their own FOIA officer. Each department is essentially responsible for responding to their own FOIAs. As secretary to the board, the county clerk has responded to county board FOIAs for years.
But with a brand new board, there's, to eliminate assumption and question. There again, I injected on the agenda to officially establish the county clerk as the FOIA officer for the county board. I have a motion and a second, discussion.
So if I receive a FOIA request to my personal email about, or to my county board email requesting documents germane to the county board, I send that to her to answer?
Yeah, you would send that to her because she would have the capability of reading the FOIA and then sourcing the documents from wherever, if it needs to come from you or if it needs to come out of her, you know, documentation, wherever the FOIA may be.
If he gets FOIA'd as an individual board member, I'm not going to have everything that's in his email. I'm only going to have what I have in terms of the board as a whole.
Right.
So he would have to respond to that FOIA.
So,
but it would need to be done through one central location. And the only reason I'm going to say this is because you wouldn't know what would need to be redacted.
True, but I mean, like I said, I'm not going to have access to his county email, and I wouldn't want to have access to his email.
well, I'm curious if it's proper to FOIA an individual board member.
I can help with that.
Jeremy.
There was, I think, a court case that came out of Cook County, I don't have the citation in front of me, that said it is not appropriate to FOIA an individual member of a public body. You FOIA the body. You do not FOIA a member of the public body. Okay. Also, that brings up a question of mine. Committees of the board are individual and unique public bodies. Is this item going to cover the FOIA-ing of those county board committees as well as the board as a whole?
Right, and that's where I say, even though if you get a FOIA, I would still consult with our FOIA officer. If you've got all the documentation that is responsive to a FOIA, as long as you at least consult with the FOIA officer, at least you can have some sort of direction of how to respond. However, I would like to bring this to attention. In the FOIA statute, which is 5 ILCS 140/7, Section 7, which is the exemption. So it says, when a request is made to inspect or copy a public record that contains information that is exempt from disclosure under this section, but also contains information that is not exempt from this disclosure, the public body may elect to redact the information that is exempt. The public body shall make the remaining information available for inspection and copy, subject to this requirement. The following shall be exempt from inspection and copy. I went all the way to section F before I found something relevant to a board. Letter F specifies that preliminary drafts, notes, recommendations, memoranda, and other records in which opinions are expressed or policies or actions are formulated are exempt from inspection and copy. The qualifier here, and it goes on to say, because it says, or policies or actions are formulated, except that a specific record or relevant portion of a record shall not be exempt when the record is publicly cited and identified by the head of the public body. And then it goes on about the legislator. The exemption provided in this paragraph extends to all those records of the officers and agencies of the General Assembly that pertain to preparations of legislative documents. So the whole point is, according to this, if two of you are communicating, that is memoranda and other records in which opinions are expressed or policies or actions are formulated, those are not records of the board. That's not a record of the public body. So under this, I see it to be exempt from inspection and copy. You look it up, 5 ILCS 140/7, go to section 7, pick up section F, and it's an interesting read. So if you go, and word-wise, it repeats itself 3 times in the statute. I have no idea why. I just happened to find that and scrolling through it. So, to the clerk's point, if there's a rumor of a communication or a suspicion of a communication, it's not subject to FOIA because there's no public citing of that communication. Now, if I said I received an email from Mark that said XYZ about ABCs, then any person in the public would say, I want that email. I publicly cited it as the head of the board, it says right here. So, a little bit of FOIA training, a little bit of brushing up on things, but it clarifies that if we get FOIA'd for something, and it's not on the onus of the clerk to go back and say, okay, so you need to scroll through all your emails and find out what was said, and then be responsive to this FOIA. That's not her job to go through your emails and figure that out. So, the FOIA officer is responsible for the record of the board. This is just making it official, like I said. Brand new board, there's a lot of questions, this is a question. Lori?
I'd like to add to the record that the 5 ILCS 140/3.5 is the section about the Freedom of Information Officer, that they will, upon, shall develop a list of documents or categories of records that the public body shall immediately disclose upon request. So there are specific things that can be pulled immediately, not just every single thing, and also going along with your exclusion. I mean, so we will know ahead of time what you can pull and what you will have access to, or is there, in a second thought, will you be given access to our emails, or will it be incumbent upon you?
I don't want access to your emails.
Okay, so
If somebody
sends
emails me and says, I want the bids that were submitted for the March 1st farm bid, I will provide that document.
because it's been submitted to
Yeah, exactly.
the committee. So if somebody sends me a personal email or an email to my county email requesting something that is of county business, then we are to communicate with you, the officer, and then you would, I need a little more clarification on what that process
The
would
job
be.
description's pretty big so far.
Yeah, and it's actually specified in the FOIA statute.
I think Jessica's just responsible. If somebody wants the minutes of, like, the FOIA's the minutes, that, I mean, for the business of the board is what Jessica is responsible for as a FOIA officer, correct? Not emails, it's just the business of the board.
Yeah. The public record, publicly cited.
And only for the board. Somebody FOIA's the health department, they're gonna take care of that. Somebody FOIA's supervisor of assessments, they're gonna take care of that.
This is an officiation of what you're already doing.
So where's the list of documents or categories of records that the public body shall immediately disclose? Like, is that just the minutes? Or where's the list? So that we know as board members to have that it's.
Say that again. I can probably answer your question real fast, but go ahead.
It says Freedom of Information Officers shall develop a list of documents or categories of records that the public body shall immediately disclose upon request. And if it's just minutes,
I would venture to say that list is extensive, and it's a lot easier to put exclusions on, like minutes that have not been approved, closed session minutes, and litigation things that, those are all exclusions from.
So that would
So
include
it's
emails?
everything.
So it would include all emails?
I
and conversation as something is being developed, are there not emails that include communication outside of that, that fall between those two agreements?
For instance, I was FOIA'd for all of my email communication with Julie. I got FOIA'd for that.
Okay.
So I had to go and pull every email that I'd sent that included Julie, which I did, I don't know. I've done so many FOIA requests since 2018, it's been ridiculous, but it's just, you just pull it and do it. I don't have to create anything to answer a FOIA, but, I mean, if I don't have it, I don't have to create a document to answer a FOIA.
I guess my question is where are the parameters or the guidelines of how the board as a public body, each individual is to respond to FOIA requests? We just go see our FOIA officer and she'll get you the documents?
That would be, I would suggest, talking to your FOIA officer, and she can help you along on how to respond, if you need to respond in XYZ fashion.
I mean, if you're curious, take the FOIA training.
No,
It's the same place where the PAC is.
I've gone through that several times. I'm trying to get it fleshed out. So if this is just making it for the record and you've done this anyway, why are individuals getting FOIA requests? And
So that's why I bring to your attention, section 7, part F, is to educate you guys on what I found in conversation of what she is not privy to. Clerk.
I think what you're referencing is what's commonly called demand documents. A lot of cities have those where a person comes in and says, hey, can you tell me what your ordinance is? And they can set an ordinance book on the counter that you can look at. But it's a demand document that you need immediately that you don't typically have to wait 5 days for because of common practices of customary business. I hope that clarifies what you were trying to look for.
I have a call to vote by Tim. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 10 is discussion and vote to open closed meeting minutes and records from June 9th, 22 and January 12th, 23 upon recommendation of the legislative committee.
I'll make that motion.
Sonny makes a motion to open the closed meeting minutes from those two meetings. I have a second. Second by Eve. One question I have is the January 12th minutes. That issue has not been resolved yet. Is there any adjustment to that? Is it still the consensus of the committee to open those minutes? Jeremy?
I think I recall raising that concern with the committee upon reading the minutes, and that was just the minutes. That didn't include the recording, and this would, so there's a difference there. The committee decided there was nothing in the minutes to keep closed, but then this does also include the recording, and so that either way on the January 12th, I think we'll be fine. But the committee was required to review these, and so we did.
Yeah, the June 9th minutes I have no issue with.
And I move to remove the January 12th.
Okay, so Tad's making a motion to amend the main motion to exclude January 12th from being opened up.
Second.
Seconded by Jeremy. All in favor? Any other discussion on January 12th? Hearing none, all in favor of keeping January 12th closed? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, can I get a hand right? Sunny, Julie.
Sunny, Julie,
Who's over
Cody.
here? Cody. Is that it? Oh, 10.
You got 4.
4.
Okay, so the amendment carries, so it would rewrite the main motion to only open the June 9th closed session. Any discussion on that? favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So the effect of that is we'll only open June 9th closed session. Next on the agenda is item 11, discussion and vote to approve the resolution concerning Illinois gun control bills tabled on 2/9. Motion tabled by Mayhall. Mr. Mayhall, would you like to make a motion to
I
remove?
make a motion to remove my table.
Yeah, motion from Tad to pick up the table, seconded by Sonny. Back to the business. Jeremy, you have the floor.
I would just make the motion to approve the revised resolution.
Second. Seconded by Heath. Any discussion on the revised resolution as presented?
This is the one that's filed February 16, 2023.
That's correct. Hearing no discussion, I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 12. County Clerk Jessica Fox, discussion and vote to approve resolution to implement a recording fee increase due to Public Act 102-1135, which increases the rental housing surcharge program fee from $9 to $18. Wow, that's a double, from 9 to 18, sorry. Motion to approve the resolution. Martha makes a motion. Mark, you want to second it? Jessica, I'll open the floor to you if you want to say anything.
The state began the rental housing program in July 1st of 2005, so I guess they haven't had a raise in quite some time. This will become effective July 1st of 2023. We have to give, other clerks will recommend and given a 60 to 90 day notice of this increase. My organization has kind of fought this for several years. This got slipped past in lame duck. So basically, instead of getting $9 from anybody that records a land-related document, the state's going to get 18. The county currently gets 50 cents to recorder automation and 50 cents to the general fund. So out of the $18, essentially, yeah. So, but anyway, that's the gist of it. You know, some housing authorities get this money. The state's not really good. Of course, most of it goes north. The state's not real good about being able to say what goes where. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it because we didn't make the decision, Springfield did.
So in a roundabout way, this is just a conformity to the state law. Mark?
You're getting $1 forward, you're getting $1 going forward as well.
It's not going to change. The dollar that we get really isn't reflected. $9 out of 10 goes to RHSP, and the county in a roundabout way gets $1. But this increase, the dollar that the county gets isn't going to change. $18 now will go to the state. So.
Just gonna make a motion, or did we already?
We
Weird second.
I had a motion by
Sorry.
Martha made the motion and Mark seconded. Yeah. Any other discussion? This doesn't require a roll call.
Well, actually, the person recording the document's paying the fee. We just collect the fee and then we send the fee to the state.
Right, but the roll call vote.
No, we're not. No.
Yeah, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Committee reports, item 13. Any reports from the committees? We've heard from budget, farm, who else we heard from? Public safety. Anything on that?
Yes, we are working aggressively on securing bids for fixing these windows. The money's budgeted. We had one meeting, we have another meeting, and we plan to work on that at our next Public Safety Committee meeting. Additionally, we had, at the last public safety meeting, we discussed the future of ambulance disbursements, and we're going to rehash that and hopefully be able to bring something to the board at the next meeting.
Very good.
With the windows, one of the problems was the architects that we had in Effingham, that project ceased, they ceased. So Mr. Tate is going to the state to try to get recommendations on a historical architect that can help us write the bid and kind of oversee the project.
There's a meeting coming up around the 20-something of March that we're hoping to meet with a guy about that. So we are moving that along. If anybody's interested, that's going to happen in public safety.
Finance committee, anything to add? Really kind of. Very good. All right, moving on.
Hey, Bobby.
Yes.
I went to 2 airport meetings.
Yeah.
Although I'm not officially on the airport committee yet, but I have gone. And I feel like we really need to promote the airport because it's quite an asset for the county. And Brenda Elder showed up at the meeting the other night, and she's going to do some Facebook stuff about it. They have a fly club with 9 members right now and getting more members. They also give flying lessons, and they have 2 airplanes out there. For the people out there don't actually give the lessons that somebody else does, but anyway, they have the facility. They have the airplanes for the lessons, and they say they have more people coming now who used to fly, say 40 years ago, and have more interest in it. They're going to have a car show on July the 8th. It's going to be like a fly-in car show or whatever, just for people to be aware of the airport. So anyway, I think we need to support them.
Very good. Any other committee reports? Hearing none, then chairman updates as you see listed there, we've got the resignation of the zoning administrator. So, hence the discussion previously on the agenda. We are seeking a zoning administrator as well as an EMA director as well too.
Can I say something to that? Bill came over today and helped me process some stuff and answer some questions for people, so he said he'd be willing to do that every 7 to 10 days, a couple hours to help keep those processes going until you're able to fill that position, so I'm thankful to Bill for that.
Yeah, and he said he'd also be willing to come back and help the new person get their feet on the ground and get to run. So, Bill's been outstanding to work with, and unfortunately, through his own circumstances, he was not able to stay with the county. So,
Yeah, just on this question, so are we at a standstill on building permits then? I mean,
No,
are we,
we were processing them today.
what's that?
No, we were processing them today. He came over to help me learn that process so we can keep it going until that position's
So we
filled.
have some continuity, at least
Yes.
we don't put stuff.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
helping, it's fantastic.
executively, between myself, Erica, Bill, we're keeping those things in flow. Very good. So, up to chairman appointments, I'd like to appoint Mike Wheeler to the County Farmland Assessment Review Committee. Jeremy, second motion, seconded by Dave. Discussion?
Where's Mike Wheeler from?
Mike Wheeler's from right down around the Clarksburg area, right down by Hidden Springs.
This will be a different Mike Wheeler.
Huh?
Is there 2 of them in Shelby County?
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
The Mike Wheeler that I talked to, not the other one. I don't know who the other one is, I'm sorry, I did not know that. So it's the one that,
Bobby talked to you.
yeah, it's the one that I talked to, it's the one that works at SSI, I believe.
Okay, I don't know, anyway.
So, yeah, I apologize. For the record, it's the one I talked to, not the other one. Wow, impressive, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries, thank you. Next appointment is Carol Cole to the Airport Committee. Martha makes a motion, seconded by Jeremy. Any discussion? Hearing none, correspondences. Just today, I got a voicemail from a representative from the Grain Belt project. I need to call them back. I'm going to get an email address so I can actually have some written correspondences, but more or less they've gotten, there's been some state approvals and some ICC approvals that they're going to start rolling on this Grain Belt. They're very, very infancy stages. Did you get anything on it?
I didn't. Are they gonna eminent domain that, or?
I don't know. I saw something on Facebook too, so it's not exactly secret
I
that
haven't
you called me.
I haven't gotten anything about it, not since our last town hall meeting.
Okay, so it's just one of those things I just want to bring to your attention, that I was contacted by Grain Belt. What else? I think all the other correspondence is pretty much enough.
I am gonna say this, we are recording an ungodly amount of agreements for wind farms.
Lease agreements?
Just agreements right now, I believe, so that if they would come in, that these people would, but we've recorded a lot for different companies. So,
I was at a farm bureau meeting on Tuesday. Shelby County, it was a conglomerate of counties, Cole, Shelby, Edgar, Douglas, Cumberland possibly, Moultrie. Basically, it was all invited to the meeting over in Charleston. The long and the short of it was, through the state legislation, there's going to be some implications on the counties to get up to date. My memory is certainly right, by May 27th, we need to be basically meeting state standards. So we need to have our ordinances rewritten to meet state standards on certain criteria. There is aid from the Farm Bureau. There is aid through the Department of Ag possibly, Department of Revenue possibly, in essence, to get the counties in check with what the state said. With that said, that meeting was more in line to, here's what's happened, and this is to the landowner, this is to the public, this isn't to counties, this is not to any county official. This was a meeting for landowners. Long and short of it was, here's what has happened to the state, here's what your options are, here's some resources in which to consult with these matters. Either for or against, it was just information. So, to that point, there are numerous resources. You can contact your local farm bureau about it, on wind and solar. So, but nonetheless, we have work to do here. So that's all the correspondence I can think of at the moment. Any old business? Hearing none, I'd accept a motion to approve the claims. Okay. Martin make a motion to approve the claims?
Yes.
Any second? Tim Brown makes a second. Mark?
I would like to amend the claims, ask that we pull the keys claim.
There are the keys?
Yes. To be sent back to the committee for review. So we understand, the committee would get to review it and decide actually whether it was a viable invoice or not.
So I got a motion to hold the RW Keys invoice, and seconded by Martha. Roll call, roll call, you remember.
Mark?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Clay?
Yes.
Annette? Chad? Keith?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Sonny?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yep.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so the motion to approve the claims as amended. Any discussion on that?
is gone. Tim?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Clay?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Tad? Keith?
Yes.
Tim? Lori? David? Bobby?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Mitchell? Jeremy?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Keith, seconded by Tad. All